Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Was Frozen in Time? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Aizawa expected to be going home to his loud husband to play with their cats and watch a movie. Then, he heard about a building collapsing while people were inside and knew he needed to help. When he arrived on site, he could see the aftermath of the collapse. He recalled that they were attempting to remodel the building when all hell broke loose. He simply needed to make sure all the civilians were evacuated. Simple, right? Nope, not even close. He was escorting the last of the civilians out of the ravaged building when he felt something peculiar. His foot brushed against a hinge. After everyone was evacuated, he returned to the spot with the hinge and removed some rubble that had landed near it. Instantly, some of the floor dimly lit steps. He noticed that there was older, more discolored wood near the hinge. Concerned someone may be down there, he called for backup and cautiously walked down. Everyone knew that the building was created 300 years ago, around the time quirks began to appear. The undisturbed layers of dust that coated the floor led him to believe that no one had been down there in a long time. Aizawa knew he should turn back, but something, maybe curiosity, pulled him towards the darker part of the basement. When he neared the end, Aizawa paused. There were a variety of bones on the ground. He noted that there were 2 skulls near the top of the bone pile. Aizawa carefully walked over the bone pile and shivered. The sight before him created surprise, confusion, and concern within him. There was a small boy with curly, green hair, freckles, and pale skin. Aizawa stared at the kid who appeared to be 14 or 15 years old. His entire body was encased in ice, but, rather than looking dead, he just seemed asleep. Aizawa heard a voice loudly ask from the top of the stairs, "Hey Racerhead, what's going on?" Aizawa knew he was a part of the backup he requested because the building had been sealed off by the police to avoid additional injuries. "We need an ambulance. Now," Aizawa shouted. Aizawa spotted words carved into the ice, Midoriya Izuku, the son of All for One, which mystified Aizawa. Who the hell was All for One? When Yagi received a call from Nezu, he was confused. Nezu was only supposed to call about students that would make good successors. "Well, hello, I wasn't expecting a call so soon," Yagi said, stunned by the unexpected call. "I wanted to discuss something important with you. It regards All for One. Did All for One have a family?" Nezu asks. "What? I would have known about it, believe me," Yagi said. The notion of All for One having a family sickened Yagi because they would only face manipulation. "Well, one of my staff members found a boy encased in ice, with the carving Midoriya Izuku, the son of All for One. Does the name Midoriya Izuku sound familiar?" Nezu asked. Yagi heard a voice in his head say, "Nephew? He is still alive?" Yagi felt a surge of emotions. First he was shocked. Once he processed the news, rage and concern washed over him. He was furious with the first holder for not telling him, nor the others about this. He felt that the other one for all users were furious with the first holder as well. They would need to deal with this later. "No, that name is not familiar. I will arrive soon to discuss this." "Thank you for informing me," Yagi said. "One more thing before you go. My staff member, your future co-worker, wants answers. I think it will be best to give them to him. You know more about All for One, and I think he has earned the right to know about this." "He did find him after all," Nezu said. Yagi didn't like this idea, but he knew it wouldn't be fair to simply tell him to forget about a boy he found. "All right, I will talk to him when I can." "What's his name?" Yagi asked. "Eraserhead is his hero name. Aizawa Shoyuda is his civilian name. Can someone give me an update?" Aizawa yelled at the poor nurse. I am sorry, we really can't dash," she explained before Aizawa cut her off. "Is he alive? Can I at least know that?" Aizawa shouted in frustration. "Shoyuda, stop yelling at these poor women." Hizashi exclaimed at him. Hizashi arrived a few minutes ago. He was trying and failing to calm him down. Aizawa hadn't been calm since he reached the hospital. He is alive if that helps. The nurse stuttered. This helped Aizawa calm down a little bit. Sorry for yelling. Aizawa apologized as he went to sit down. Aizawa had been here for almost 2 hours. He texted Hizashi everything, so he drove there to help Aizawa process everything. Hizashi thought it best to tell Nedzu everything in the hopes that he might find something. Aizawa kept remembering the boy. He looked like he was calmly sleeping, but Aizawa had been terrified that the kid was dead. Seeing him so helpless had messed with Aizawa. Shoyuta, please calm down. You have been giving the staff a hard time. Hizashi reminded him pointedly. I know, I'm sorry, but I have no idea what to think. I found a kid frozen in ice and I hadn't been told anything for 2 hours. Aizawa explained. It was frustrating for Aizawa. He still had so many questions, but he knew he wasn't going to get any answers. After 2 hours he had just learned that the kid he rescued was alive. Look, I know you are frustrated, so am I. However, we can't lose our heads. I know, it's just I can't stop thinking about how he looked. What is Nedzu doing here? Aizawa asked upon seeing Nedzu coming towards them. Hizashi was a little worried but also hopeful that Nedzu was going to give them some answers. Let's go somewhere private. We have a lot to discuss. Nedzu explained. As Aizawa and Hizashi both wanted answers, they followed quietly. Please tell me, you know something about the kid? Inquired Aizawa as they entered a private room. Aizawa observed a skeleton-like man waiting in the room. He had messy blonde hair with glowing blue eyes. He glanced at them and offered a weak smile. Who is this? Hizashi asked. I thought dash. He was interrupted by Nedzu, who was looking at the stranger. This is his husband, and I can assure you they both can be helpful. You might want to introduce yourself before explaining what you know. The skeleton man sighed and the man suddenly turned into All Might. Hizashi freaked out and Aizawa looked surprised. I am here, All Might said as he returned to his skeleton-like form. He then began coughing up blood. Are you all right? Aizawa and Hizashi asked at the same time. All Might waved his hand absent-mindedly and then wiped himself with a towel. It's fine, that is not why I am here. I am here to provide you with some answers, he said. Aizawa was interested in hearing what All Might knew about this. Please sit down and I will explain everything. All Might promised. As Yagi was explaining All for One, One for All, and his personal history with All for One, Aizawa started to feel slightly sick. So what about his son? Aizawa asked. He needed to know how badly the kid was treated for him to be trapped in ice. I didn't even know he had a son until today. However, I do know more now thanks to the first One for All user who offered us more details. Yagi explained. What do you mean by that? Hizashi questioned. Yagi knew he couldn't waste too much time explaining the details. One for All is a complex quirk. Basically, I can speak with the first One for All user, Yagi said. What did the kid's uncle say then? Aizawa queried. Well, he told us a lot, Yagi said as he thought back on his conversation with the past users. He let out a sigh and continued. He knows very little, but he knows enough for us to form a timeline. He was not aware he had a nephew until he met his mother. He doesn't know a lot as his mother was very paranoid. I wouldn't blame her. Her name was Inko Midoriya, and from what the first user told me, she tried her best to keep her son away from his father. However, his father still managed to get a hold of him. Izuku was used, manipulated, abused, and tortured by his father throughout most of his life. His mother, along with some family friends, were able to save him, but they knew he would not be safe unless his father was gone. Inko had a plan to hide them, but things went wrong. His uncle was never told where she and Izuku were hidden. The first holder didn't know the full plan, but he knew things went wrong. Yagi explained to them. Why didn't he look for them? Aizawa asked. Honestly, he had hoped they were dead, Yagi said. What? Why would he want that? Hizashi cried out. They had suffered enough. Inko spent most of her life on the run, desperately trying to stay alive, find her son, keep him safe, and avoid All for One. Izuku knew nothing but pain his entire life. He was used by his father as a weapon and had suffered enough. He wanted them to finally be at peace. Yagi clarified. Well, we know things didn't go according to plan. Izuku is here without his mother, and now we need to figure out what to do. Aizawa said. Hisashi sighed, sitting down. This was a mess. There was a kid that was frozen in time, had to suffer God knows what, and now was completely alone with no one who cared about him left alive. At least he no longer needed to worry about his father since All Might did defeat him. So that was one less thing to worry about. But this poor kid was all alone, with God knows how much mental trauma and issues, and he had a powerful quirk that may not even be controllable. What can we do for him? Hisashi asked. What are you going to do with him? Aizawa corrected. Yagi sighed. I am going, to be honest, my first gut reaction was to throw him into Tartarus. What? Aizawa exclaimed. I said it was. It was my first reaction, however, I know it was an irrational idea. I only reacted to hearing about All for One. I won't punish a child that is a victim of his father's abuse. It wouldn't be right, however, I do not trust him either. Yagi said. Netsu finally spoke after listening to everything. I think we should observe him, then judge him if he's anything like his father. If not, then we can train him to control his quirk for the greater good. That seems to be our best decision. Yagi agreed. Hisashi nodded in approval. Aizawa just sighed, still processing everything they learned when there was knocking at the door. A nurse opened the door and explained, My apologies, I was told to give you an update on the boy that was encased in ice. He is awake. Mom W please. You have to go, sweetie. Izuku, we don't have time. Come on, we need to go. I can't leave yet. Mom, you're supposed to come with me. Sweetie, go, please listen to me. Izuku's mind was racing. He didn't understand what was going on. Did everything go according to plan? What was the plan again? How did he end up here? He was supposed to be with his father, right? Did he escape? Was he foolish enough to escape? He was going to be in so much trouble. Why couldn't he remember anything? What is going on? So many questions kept filling up Izuku's head. Relax, Izuku. Try to remember everything slowly. Right, he managed to escape his father, find his uncle, they had a plan to escape from his father, and everything is fuzzy. What happened to the details? Izuku always remembers the minor details. Why was everything so messy? He needed to wake up. Izuku tried to open his eyes slowly, but the light blinded him. God, why was it so bright? He tried to move his arms, but he couldn't. It felt painful to attempt to move his arms. Izuku panicked as he was vulnerable. Hey, please be careful when moving. Your body is still adjusting, said an unfamiliar male voice. Izuku's eyes were adjusting as they tried to take in his new surroundings. What an interesting response he's having. He is reacting very quickly to everything. He is alert and on guard. That's a good thing. Another voice said. Izuku gazed at the ceiling, then turned to the wall, and finally, his eyes landed on a homeless-looking man staring at him. Aizawa moved to sit in the vinyl chair next to Midoriya's bed and slowly turned to examine the green-haired boy as he stirred. Where am I? Izuku whispered as he moved to face the man next to him. After Izuku took in his surroundings, he cleared his throat. Then he asked louder, where am I? You are at the hospital, Aizawa offered. Izuku processed the stranger's words as he attempted to recall the events that led him here. Aizawa held out a cup of water to Izuku for his dry throat. Izuku tried to take it, but a sharp ache coursed through his arm the moment he moved it. Do you want help? Hisashi offered. Izuku hesitated for a moment and then nodded his head in acquiescence. Hisashi attentively helped him up and assisted him in drinking his water. Yagi eyed Izuku as he started to settle back down. My name is Aizawa Shoyuda. I am a hero known as Eraserhead. Do you mind if we ask you some questions? Aizawa questioned. No, I do not mind. Where is my mother? She has to be here, she needs to be. Izuku anxiously affirmed. We will get into all of that, Aizawa assured him. Izuku was unnerved. Izuku felt that this was not supposed to happen, but he had no idea why he felt like that. What is your name? Aizawa asked. My name is Midoriya Izuku, Izuku responded. How old are you? Aizawa asked. I am 15, my birthday is July 15th, Izuku replied. Before we continue, I think you should know why you are in the hospital, Aizawa said, but he sincerely didn't want to be the one to tell him. You found me in ice. How long has it been? Izuku said. Why do I feel so confident that I was encased in ice? I have no memories of it happening. Izuku thought. It has been about 300 years, Yagi bluntly informed him. 300 years? No, it could not have been that long. It should not have been that long. His mom was, he had friends, what happened to them? He knew he had them, but now they were all gone. Everything was gone, he had nothing and was utterly alone. Izuku's mind was racing. This was not part of the plan. What went wrong? Izuku had not realized he had started crying. His family was gone, he had just got them back and they were gone again. Why? Why is this happening again? Izuku hated how he could not remember anything. He could only remember certain things and it was driving him crazy. Hey, can you hear us? Asked Aizawa steadily. Izuku nodded slowly as he tried to distance himself from his more painful thoughts. I am truly sorry you are going through something like this. I can only begin to imagine how difficult this is, and will continue to be for you, said a man who resembled a skeleton. Izuku wiped his tears and tried to stop shaking. I am sorry, it's a lot. I don't even remember much. I believe a memory wiping quirk was used on me. I truly want to help, but I cannot remember any relevant details. I just know who I am and am certain of some details. Izuku explained. What details are you certain of? Asked a bear rat. Izuku took a deep breath before stating, My name is Midoriya Izuku. I am the son of Midoriya Inko and All for One. I was kidnapped by my father, but somehow I escaped from him. At some point, my mother came up with a plan which did not go well. Something went wrong. That is all I know. I am sorry, I wish I could be more useful. Watching Izuku struggle to keep himself from falling apart was difficult. Hisashi really couldn't watch without being affected personally. This kid is processing that he has no one familiar in his life and has to begin a wholly new life. Without friends, family, or even a home. He also had been abused by his father, so that added a whole new layer to Izuku's situation. What the hell are we going to do with this poor kid? We just need to help this kid. Hey little listener, thank you for telling us everything. I know it was a lot. How about we leave so you can rest? You have done a lot for today. Hisashi suggested. I think I slept long enough, Izuku replied. Hisashi chuckled. At least this kid had a sense of humor. He was completely unaware of it, but it was still funny. Alright, if you need us, call us. My name is Yamada Hisashi, he is Shota Aizawa, he is Tashinori Yagi, and he is Nedzu. Call us off if you need us. Hisashi introduced them while gesturing to each figure as he called their names. Izuku nodded in acknowledgement as they left. Yagi was still processing everything he learned. He pitied Izuku because he had been abruptly inserted into a new life, but he still felt wary towards him. He knew that they had to keep a close eye on him. He had his father's quirk, and it was extremely powerful. Abandoning him was out of the question, but where would he go? That was a very informative conversation, Nedzu said. Aizawa sighed, unsure of what to think. I have begun forming a plan on how to handle Izuku. I think the best thing for him is to stay at UA under our watch. We will be more thorough in helping him than the Hero Commission. We should teach him to control his quirk, work on improving his mental health, observe him, and care for him. Nedzu explained. That sounds like a reasonable plan, and watching him will allow us to expand it. Who will be watching him? Yagi asked. A nurse was moving Izuku's arms to help his body get used to moving again. There you go. Try moving your arms above your head now, the nurse said. Izuku managed to try without wincing, but the pain was still too bad for him to move. It's okay, don't force yourself. The doctor will be coming soon, she informed him. Izuku felt his body stiffen. I didn't do anything. I was behaving like I didn't want to see him. Izuku thought, as his breathing rate rapidly increased on the monitor. Izuku, you will have to see the doctor for your behavior. And oh please. I promise to behave. I have already made up my mind about your behavior. You're making things worse for yourself. Please stop, I'm sorry. Please. I'm sorry. Aizawa began running to Izuku's room when the nurse told them that Izuku was having a panic attack. His quirk was reacting to his distressed state and was damaging the bed he laid on. Let me go in. My quirk won't cause huge damage. I'll try to calm him down, Aizawa shouted before almost breaking down the door. Izuku was curled up, crying, struggling to breathe, and surrounded by a green aura that contained green lightning. Aizawa wanted to bind him up, but he was worried it would send him into a worse state of panic. Plus, he can only erase one quirk at a time. Izuku has multiple quirks, and he might use another one instinctively. Aizawa knew he would not be successful if he simply bound him. He needed to calm him down immediately. Izuku, can you hear me? It's Aizawa, I need you to breathe, Aizawa shouted while dodging some lightning. He planned to get as close as he could before using his quirk. Sorry, I can't, Izuku shouted while shaking uncontrollably. Izuku, I need you to focus. I am going to place my hands on your shoulders and I want you to listen to me, okay? Aizawa pleaded. Then he activated his quirk. Aizawa gently placed his hands on Izuku's shoulders, and Izuku flinched slightly. His breathing was frantic, and he kept muttering under his breath. Izuku, listen to me closely. You are at a hospital, you are safe, your father is not here. Just focus on copying my breathing. Okay? Izuku nodded, even though he was still unable to stop shaking. The doctor was going to see him and he was in trouble. He was going to be punished for his behavior. What did he do to get into trouble this time? He was listening and did everything right, so what did he do wrong? Izuku, can you tell 5 things you can see? Aizawa asked. Izuku looked around the hospital room. He wasn't in the room anymore, so was the doctor not going to see him? The bed, the window, the door, and the blanket, Izuku replied shakily. Great, now tell me 4 things you can feel, Aizawa said. As they continued, this method helped Izuku relax enough to regain control of his quirk. A nurse came in and gave Izuku a sedative so he could sleep. Aizawa's body sagged when Izuku's eyes closed and his breathing evened out. Hizashi, Yagi, and Nedzu then entered the room. Aizawa was still trying to calm his nerves. I think my idea still stands, Nedzu said. Aizawa groaned while recalling what Nedzu said before they rushed out. I agree with Nedzu. You managed to calm him down enough for the nurses to sedate him, Yagi said. I still don't like it. What will I do when school starts? Aizawa asked. We will think of something. Right now he needs help and we are his solution. Nedzu pointed out. Babe, I agree with them. Plus it's not like he is coming home with us. Hizashi added. Aizawa knew they were right, but he figured this problem child was going to give him headaches. All right, fine. I will be watching Izuku, Aizawa agreed reluctantly. As the 7th day of Izuku being in the hospital passed, everyone was thankful Izuku didn't have another panic attack. Izuku felt extremely guilty for his panic attack and strived to be on his best behavior for the entire week. Aizawa and Hizashi tried to help Izuku with his mental health, but it was difficult. They quickly learned that Izuku did not open up at all. No one was surprised that Izuku didn't trust them or want to be vulnerable with them. While no one blamed him for being cautious of everyone, it was just frustrating. Aizawa was attempting to learn more about Izuku. He didn't know much, but one thing quickly became apparent. Izuku was fascinated by quirks, which made sense. Izuku was born in a time where quirks were new to the world, but now, since quirks were everywhere, Izuku could not help but be fascinated by them. He kept muttering to himself while writing notes and asking questions about someone's quirk. Aizawa found it creepy at first, but he quickly realized it was pretty useful. Izuku was a smart kid and offered some valuable advice to Aizawa on how to fight better. Aizawa was pretty impressed, since Izuku didn't know much about heroes. Hizashi grew fond of Izuku. He enjoyed introducing modern things to Izuku. Well, to new things, since Izuku never really did normal things such as eating whatever food he wanted. Even after he was rescued from his father, he was unable to get a proper meal because he was on the run. Izuku got to experience eating sweets, trying snacks, a proper meal, using a cell phone, and picking his clothes. Izuku had never been more excited in his own life. To say Hizashi spoiled Izuku was an understatement. Izuku slowly grew to like Hizashi and Aizawa. They treated him nicely compared to everyone else Izuku knew. Once he reached his last day at the hospital, he was restless. Soon Izuku would be leaving the hospital and he was both excited and nervous. He knew he was going to be at UA, but he didn't know if he was worth the risk. Ready, little listener? Hisashi asked as he finished helping Izuku pack the few things he had. Weiss, I am just a little nervous, Izuku said, as he paced around the room. He didn't know what he was more nervous about, going to UA or meeting with Nezu. Nezu was going to give something to Izuku for his quirks. It was something he had been working on just for him. You will love it at UA. Plus we have some older kids to help you as we train your quirk. Hisashi assured him. I truly appreciate it, but I don't think I am worth all the trouble, Izuku murmured. Nonsense. We want to help you. After all, you didn't ask for any of this to happen to you. As heroes, it is our job to help out. Hisashi informed him while struggling to keep his voice lowered, since Izuku hated loud noises. Izuku nodded, but he still felt out of place. Heroes were such a strange thing to him. It felt like he was living in a comic book. However, he was the character that had the tragic backstory. You know, whenever I hear heroes, I keep thinking of comic books. I used to read them when I was really little. I think I was 5 when I last read one. Izuku shared his thoughts out loud. Well, I will need to add that onto the list of things I need to get for you. Hisashi teases. Oh no, please don't. I didn't mean it like that. You already wasted enough money. I couldn't ask any more from you, Izuku said with panic seeping into his voice. Hisashi loved spending time with Izuku. However, it was hard to be around a kid like him. He was very unaware of social cues, such as jokes. Hisashi keeps forgetting this until he gets reminded every time he makes a joke around Izuku. I genuinely don't mind Izuku. You are still a kid and you deserve to have a gift once in a while. There is nothing wrong with that, he explained. Even though Izuku was approximately 315 years old, physically and mentally he was still 15 years old. He was a very traumatized 15-year-old, but you get the point. Izuku blushed from embarrassment, but Hisashi didn't mind. He just wanted to make this kid happy. Izuku thought about everything he had experienced in this room and felt both happy to leave and a little sad. As Izuku looked around the room, he spent a week in, a knocking on the door caught their attention. Aizawa examined the new quirk suppressants that were modeled after his quirk. They looked like normal quirk suppressants, but they were able to erase his quirks. He looked at the rat bear god thing with his creepy little smile. Do these work? Aizawa questioned. Yes, however, they can only work if you have the DNA of the wearer. Midoriya willingly gave some of his DNA, but I doubt villains would do the same thing, don't you agree? Nezu pointed out. Aizawa nodded while he continued his examination of them. They were much lighter than the current quirk suppressants available. All right, let's get him to UA, Aizawa said as he picked his keys up. Izuku fiddled with the quirk suppressant in the car. It wasn't that they were uncomfortable, they were surprisingly comfortable to wear. He just hated how they felt on his wrist. He was almost waiting for the chains to just appear on them any second. You all right there? Hisashi asked, noticing Izuku fidgeting in his seat. Fine. I'm just trying to get used to these, he sheepishly explained as he flashed the cuffs towards him. Yeah, they aren't fun to wear, Aizawa commented. Izuku nodded in agreement. He looked out the window again. So much had changed and yet nothing changed at all. It was bizarre for him, yet Izuku couldn't get enough of it. Izuku got a chance to enjoy the trees, the sun, grass, and buildings. It was such a minor thing, but he couldn't help but be thankful to do so. We are here. Welcome to you, Hisashi shouted. Izuku jumped a little as he was deeply engrossed in his daydreaming. All right, let's get you settled in, Aizawa said as he exited the car. Izuku started tugging at his seatbelt. He tried to pull the tongue out of the buckle, but yanking on the webbing did nothing. He then tried to pull both the webbing and the buckle into opposite directions, but that failed as well. He then started pulling the webbing over his shoulder as far as it could go and was surprised when it locked into place and wouldn't move. He squirmed in annoyance and frustration. He already had trouble putting it on, and taking it off proved to be just as embarrassing. Need help? Aizawa offered. I need to do this on my own. I can't depend on others to do everything for me. Izuku replied stubbornly. It's okay to ask for help. You were never in a car before, Aizawa reassured him. I just don't remember. Izuku mumbled. Push the button down. he instructed. Izuku did so and got the seatbelt off. Thank you, Izuku said. No problem, child, Aizawa said. Izuku looked confused and slightly startled by the nickname. I get the feeling you are going to be a problem child, Aizawa explained, though that did little to help the poor, confused Izuku. You will be staying in this building. This building might be used as dorms for students later, but as of now, you will be living here. There is a common room, kitchen, bathroom, and other rooms. Netsu explained during the tour. Izuku was very overwhelmed, but he nodded. Aizawa will be watching you the whole time. He will also train you. That covers the basics. I will tell you more tomorrow. For now, you should get settled in, Netsu said. Thank you. This means a lot. Everything you have done. For me does, Izuku said as he bowed. Netsu chuckled as he said, Oh please, I am more than happy to help. Now settle in and make yourself at home. It didn't take long for Izuku to settle in. He did not like how empty everything felt. It wasn't a new feeling, but he was not a fan of it. He waited in a common room for Hisashi. Hisashi wanted Izuku to experience watching movies. Aizawa was helping Hisashi. You are spoiling him too much, Aizawa stated. I am not. Hisashi argued. Do you want to see the credit card bill? Aizawa challenged him. Can you blame me? Hisashi said defensively. I get it, but you need to control yourself, Aizawa told him. Yeah, I know. Popcorn is done, little listener. Have you decided what movies you want to watch? Hisashi asked. Izuku looked at his options and still couldn't decide. No, I haven't. Maybe this one, Izuku said as he held one up. Great. Had popcorn before? Hisashi asked. I don't remember. Izuku replied. Well, you are having some now, Hisashi said as he handed him the popcorn bowl. Izuku tried some popcorn and he loved it. Aizawa watched them from the doorway and noticed Izuku was intrigued by how Hisashi set the movie up. While Fast Play showed previews, Hisashi and Aizawa pushed a black couch closer to the television that looked new. Hisashi sat down and leaned against one arm while Izuku sat next to the other arm. Aizawa sat close to Hisashi and laid his head on the other's shoulder. Izuku loved every second of the movie. Aizawa quickly fell asleep and Hisashi fondly watched Izuku enjoy the movie. As the movie came to an end, Hisashi fell asleep. Izuku was the only one still awake. Aizawa opened his eyes, expecting Izuku to be asleep. So when he glanced over at him wide awake, rewatching the movie this late, he was a little surprised. It's late, kid. Why are you up? Izuku hadn't felt any movement before Aizawa spoke, so he froze for a second before registering his voice. Izuku turned to look at Aizawa and explained, I can't sleep. Plus I don't want to sleep. Kid, you should sleep, Aizawa suggested. Izuku shrugged, clearly not planning on it. I'm only up because I work at this time, Aizawa added. Izuku remained silent, to which Aizawa sighed in response. He lifted his head off Hisashi and popped his joints. He was about to stand when Izuku opened his mouth to say something. I may not remember much, but the feeling of certain things bothers me. Being alone all the time is one of those things, Izuku confessed. He was choosing to be very vulnerable by sharing this with Aizawa. Hopefully, Aizawa would not say the wrong thing and cause Izuku to withdraw again. I understand how you feel, Aizawa said, gathering his thoughts before continuing. When I found you, it reminded me of something and it caused a feeling I hadn't felt in years to resurface. It kind of sent me into a panic, so I understand how you feel. Izuku nodded, relieved to hear that it was normal to feel this kind of way. Now try to set some rest or you will regret it later, Aizawa advised. It took a few minutes for Izuku to fall asleep. When he did, he wasn't aware that Aizawa was still there. Izuku didn't realize that when he moved over a bit, he had started using Aizawa as a pillow to fall asleep. Aizawa knew he couldn't just leave Izuku, but he didn't know how to react when the kid leaned on him and used him as a human pillow. Aizawa didn't move Izuku right away. He wanted to wait before moving him. When he was sure Izuku wouldn't wake up, he used his scarf to help carry Izuku. He brought Izuku to the room he had set his things in, tucked him into bed, and watched for a couple of minutes just to be sure he was asleep before going to wake up Hisashi. He whined about it, but Aizawa ignored him. They went home and got as much sleep, napping for a few minutes in Aizawa's case, as they could get before getting ready for work. Izuku woke up the next morning surprised by multiple things. Firstly, he was in a room instead of the common room. Second, he slept well, and third, he could smell something. Izuku changed into a different outfit before heading downstairs. What he saw shocked him. Hisashi and Aizawa were bickering over breakfast. "He needs to eat more," Hisashi exclaimed. "He can't eat something that heavy yet," Aizawa argued. The couple went back and forth while he watched. Good morning," Izuku said hesitantly, breaking through the tension. The married couple stopped and turned their attention to him. "Morning." "Good morning, little listener. Breakfast is ready. Shoyuta just needs to make more." Aizawa cut him off. "For the last time, no." Izuku watched them begin to bicker again as he sat down at a small table with 3 chairs. Even though Aizawa and Hisashi were bickering, Izuku enjoyed it. He didn't feel alone and was really happy to see them. "So what's for breakfast?" Normally, Aizawa would be on patrols, hanging out with his cats, or spending time with his husband. This time, however, he spent all of his time with Izuku. Did it bother him? No, not really. He knew it was important that he helped Izuku get back into society and learn how to function in this new world. It had only been a week since Izuku moved into UA. Izuku and Aizawa had planned a training session on how to control his quirk. Izuku did not want to use his quirk ever again, but Aizawa argued that Izuku needed to learn to control it. He agreed with him, so Aizawa began finishing up his training plans. Izuku was passionately asking Aizawa about his quirk once more. Aizawa answered them absent-mindedly. "Why does your hair float? When you use your quirk, it floats. Why does it do that?" Izuku inquired. "That's a really good question to ask. There is an interesting reason behind it. So you see." Aizawa was cut off as he heard the door open. Izuku jumped up a little and Aizawa moved to see who it was. It was the bear rat god thing. "Knock next time." "It's fine, it's just Nedzu," Aizawa reassured Izuku. He relaxed once he confirmed it was indeed Nedzu. "I need to speak with you, Aizawa, privately before you start your training with Izuku." "All Might wishes to talk to you, Izuku," Nedzu informed them. Aizawa nodded and led Nedzu into a private room. "So what do you want?" Aizawa said, getting straight to the point as he leaned against a wall. "I think Izuku should join your class with your new first years," he stated. "Now why the hell would we do that?" Aizawa asked, while wondering what the hell Nedzu was planning. "I think it would be best for him to interact with kids his age. He would be able to catch up quicker. You have to watch him when school begins, and hiding him would be useless since students will question a new building that appears to have no use to them," he explained. On one hand, Aizawa thought it was a bad idea, but he also knew that students would be suspicious even if he was hidden away. It might help Izuku be more comfortable with this world, and the whole point of him being frozen was for him to start a new life. "I want to test it out first. If it's too much for him, I won't continue whatever little experiment you are pulling. Plus, what are we going to tell the students when they see a kid there that isn't a student here?" Aizawa asked, knowing Nedzu likely had a plan already. "Well, I did come up with a plan," Nedzu said with that crazed look in his eyes. Izuku was waiting for Aizawa and All Might when there was a knock at the door again. Izuku walked to the door to ensure it was All Might. He looked through the peephole and then opened the door for All Might. Hello, All Might. You wanted to speak with me?" Izuku stated. "Yes, I did. Please call me Toshinori. I am guessing you are aware of One for All. I wanted to talk to you about your uncle," he said. Izuku nodded and quietly chuckled to himself. "Yes, I am aware of One for All. I can sense my uncle within you. It is hard to explain, so let's sit down and talk," Izuku offered. Yagi sat across from Izuku and studied him. It was awkward for Yagi because he didn't know how to handle him, but he wanted to talk to Izuku. "Thank you," Izuku suddenly said. "Thank you? For what?" Yagi asked, slightly confused. "You defeated my father and I can live in peace, thanks to you. I owe you my life for that," Izuku explained sincerely. "Okay, be sensitive." Yagi was the only thing going through Yagi's head. "There is no need for that. I did what I had to do." Yagi started before being cut off by Izuku. "Yes, he was a villain you had to defeat. So your mentor's death wouldn't be in vain and you could keep hundreds, if not thousands, of people safe. To me, even though he is my father, you killed my abuser. You freed me from him. Izuku explained reverently. Izuku started to cry, so he wiped his tears away. Can I ask you something? About you and your father? Yagi asked. He felt rude asking, but he had to know. Izuku calmed himself down and nodded. Do you miss him? I know it's rude, you don't have to answer. Yagi added quickly. Izuku considered it before finally saying, as a son, I will miss him and continue to love him. Even with the very few memories I have, I know I have good memories of him. He was my father, and as his son, I will always miss him and love him, but as another human being Izuku hesitated before finishing, I hate him more than anything else in the world. I am thankful he died. He was a cruel person not just to me, but to many others. Knowing he won't hurt anyone else helps me sleep at night. Yagi nodded while processing everything. He knew it was complicated, and he was glad Izuku was being honest. Thank you for being honest with me. You didn't have to, Yagi said. Izuku smiled before asking, my uncle, you still speak to him? Yes, I do. I can talk to all the former one for all users. He wanted me to apologize on your behalf for not looking for you. Yagi said, I don't blame him. It was far too dangerous to look for me. He had to focus on my father. I am glad his hard work didn't go to waste. I just hope not to fail my mother and uncle. Izuku said. So many people sacrificed themselves for him and he knew he couldn't fail them. Believe me, you haven't. Your uncle is proud of you. Yagi comforted him. Izuku started to tear up again. Yagi leaned forward to pat him on the back. Shigaraki planned to discuss another idea with All for One. However, he seemed to be a bit distracted. All for One was sensing something familiar. It reminded him of his son, who he missed. He loved his son and his usefulness. He could only imagine how far he would have come if it wasn't for his mother. She ruined everything, but that was just who she was. That's what he loved about her and their son, their determination. He loved his family, he even missed them. If only his beloved Inko hadn't messed everything up. Master, is everything all right? Tamura asked once he realized he wasn't listening to him. Forgive me, Tamura, I am a bit distracted. All for One replied as the thing he was sensing disappeared. Tamura was not aware of his former family and All for One was not going to tell him unless he had a reason to. There was no point in telling him about a family that was no longer relevant. Shigaraki began to suggest before he was cut off. No, Tamura, it's all right. It's just that I sense something familiar. Don't worry about it, Tamura. I will worry about it later. He stated. Tamura nodded and started explaining his idea once more. All for One could almost feel Izuku again. Izuku, why am I thinking of you now? Izuku set his cup of tea down with a soft thump, and gestured animatedly as he talked about his favorite comic books that he read as a child. Once Aizawa finished his chat with the rat god, he walked back to Izuku with Nezu trailing behind him. Izuku heard him walking back and cut himself off while turning his head towards the sound. Problem child, how did your chat go? Aizawa inquired. It went well. Thank you so much for visiting Toshinori. Izuku said warmly. Thank you for this. I will get out of your way now. Yagi smiled at them while getting up. I need you to stay here longer, Aizawa asserted, before turning to look at Izuku. Izuku, this remote controls the quirk suppressants you are wearing, Aizawa began, as he pulled a remote out of his pocket. Nezu stood straighter and clasped his hands together while intensely staring at Izuku with his head tilted. Aizawa set the remote upright in Izuku's hand. This button stops approximately 50 of your quirks. This button allows you to use one quirk, and this button will unlock your cuffs in case there is an emergency, Aizawa explained as he pointed each button out to Izuku. The first was labeled Stop, the second button was labeled Control, and the last one was labeled Release. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asked, while handing the remote back to him. I think you have the right to know. You should also know I will be taking temporary guardianship over you as well, Aizawa paused, then continued, I want you to use your quirk on me. Izuku stared at him in utter disbelief. Nezu grinned manically and stared without blinking at them. Yagi internally debated how wise Aizawa's request was. You want me to do what? Izuku questioned Aizawa with a deep frown as he peered intently at his face. I need to understand every aspect of your quirk that I can. The best way to accomplish that is to experience it firsthand. I trust you will give it back, Aizawa said solemnly. Izuku was anxious about using his quirk on Aizawa, but Aizawa did ask him to. Izuku knew he could do it, and he didn't want to disappoint Aizawa when he had done so much for him. Izuku fidgeted before nodding his head and saying, "Give me your hands. I need to have direct skin contact to activate my quirk. I feel like I should warn you, this is going to hurt a lot, so be prepared," he advised. Aizawa moved to sit down next to him and held his hands out. He mentally prepared himself for the pain. Izuku shut his eyes as a green aura began to emanate around him and some green lightning started sparking around him. When he opened his eyes, they were glowing an earthy green. Aizawa fought the urge to use his quirk as his intuition warned him he was in danger. He trusted Izuku, so he allowed Izuku to place his hands on Aizawa's hand. Aizawa could feel it happening. It frightened him. The sensation was reminiscent of an organ forcibly being pulled out of him. He felt himself try to activate his quirk, but he was in too much pain to use the last wisps of his quirk. Once his quirk completely left his grasp, he entered a new threshold of pain. His eyes burned so strongly he was worried the water in his eyes would evaporate. He couldn't move to anything, yet his arms burned as badly as his eyes. He felt like he was set on fire and his skin was on the verge of simultaneously melting and becoming crispy. He hated every millisecond of this experience. Fascinating. What does it feel like? Nedzu asked with bright eyes and a wide grin. He isn't able to talk. It will be too painful for him to even move. He is still in the early stages. Izuku explained. Aizawa couldn't imagine a worse pain, but he did not doubt that it would come. Aizawa felt a little relief as the burning in his body lowered in intensity. Izuku felt Aizawa getting weaker while he took his quirk. He felt him try to fight back at first, but he knew Aizawa would be unsuccessful. He trained the quirk long enough that he could overpower any user's attempts to fight back. Aizawa fell back with a lifeless look. It was all too familiar to Izuku, and he hated it. This is truly interesting. What does it feel like? Nedzu asked Izuku this time. It's hard to explain since it's so mind-numbing, but it's the worst pain most people will ever feel. It feels like being burned and melting at the same time, Izuku explained as he began giving Aizawa's quirk back. He carefully continued the process of returning his quirk. For Izuku, taking a quirk was easier than giving it back. His father never instructed him on how to give someone's quirk back safely. He didn't see the point in preserving useless people's lives. Aizawa slowly started regaining his strength. As his strength increased, so did his awareness of his surroundings. Is it difficult for you to return his quirk? Yagi wondered. My father never taught me how to return a quirk gently. It would hurt more for him if I attempted to rush it, Izuku explained. Yagi nodded in understanding. Aizawa got his quirk back, but it was a while before he collected himself. That was inexperience, Aizawa said once he completely regained his senses. Izuku lowered his eyes in guilt while wishing his quirk didn't cause so much pain. I am sincerely sorry. I wish I could have spared you the pain of the experience, but Izuku abruptly stopped as Aizawa held a hand up to him. I understand and don't blame you for how your quirk works. I just need a minute. After a while, Aizawa asked, what else can your quirk do? Aizawa stood up and stretched his whole body. I can enhance a quirk's strength when I take it. I can return someone's quirk when it's stronger, but they normally don't survive. Izuku replied softly. Okay, we will begin training now, Aizawa added. Izuku inclined his head in agreement and followed after Aizawa. Yagi joined Nedzu in observing the two. Once they stopped outside, Izuku felt his stomach flutter. He wasn't taught how to fight, and he didn't want to disappoint Aizawa or embarrass himself. Have you been instructed in combat before? Aizawa inquired. And not really, no? Izuku confessed as his stomach fluttered harder. Alright, try to attack me. Do not hold back, Aizawa advised as he pressed release on the remote. Izuku felt nauseous and his hands began sweating. His green aura and lighting returned as his eyes began to glow once more. As Izuku summoned a quirk, Aizawa activated his and started running towards Izuku. Feeling the first quirk's absence, Izuku used a teleportation quirk. Aizawa stiffened in surprise as Izuku disappeared and reappeared behind him. Aizawa quickly erased that quirk. Izuku retaliated by using a speed quirk to evade Aizawa. Aizawa blinked and Izuku used both his invisibility and speed quirk. He managed to evade his gaze for a few seconds, but Aizawa glanced at his form and punched him simultaneously. They spent most of their training session like this, with Izuku switching between 4 quirks. He used teleportation, invisibility, strength, and speed quirks. He could combine 2 at a time, but he couldn't avoid Aizawa's direct attacks and the binding cloth. Aizawa examined the simplistic quirks he used and wondered why Izuku felt comfortable using only those. Most likely Izuku was scared of using them. Whether that was due to a lack of control or just a reluctance to use them, Aizawa wasn't sure. Aizawa once more released Izuku from his binding cloth before telling him that their training session was over. It's been 3 hours. You should go clean up before we have another important conversation. Aizawa walked towards the 2 onlookers while wincing. He had tried to be less tough with Izuku, yet Izuku ended up with some dark bruises. Hizashi was certainly going to kill him for it, Aizawa thought. Nedzu waited for Izuku to pass with his towel and clothes before he began his conversation with All Might and Aizawa. He, at least, has a basic understanding of his quirks. He requires a lot of training. And we have yet to see all the quirks in his possession. Nedzu started. I agree. Should we call Recovery Girl to treat his injuries? Yagi wondered aloud. He only has bruises. We don't need to call her for that. You will need to call her for me. Aizawa deadpanned. Yagi stared at him in confusion. Yamada will have your head for roughing him up, Nedzu observed. Hizashi was having a bad day. He started the day off worried about the training Izuku would experience later. Hizashi knew Aizawa tends to train his students harder than most teachers would. But Izuku wasn't a student of his. He hoped Aizawa would remember that and be gentler. Then he arrived at work to see that the equipment wasn't set up. He had a tech hand to help him, but yesterday was his last day on the job. Hizashi was so distracted by Izuku that he forgot to look for a new tech hand. So the podcast was a disaster, and he was upset at himself for allowing it to slip his mind. Thoroughly upset, Hizashi ended the show early and resolved to hire a replacement as soon as possible. He spent the rest of his time at work interviewing people and finally chose a suitable candidate. As he filled out the paperwork so his new tech hand could start tomorrow, his eyes wandered over the clock and he froze. In disbelief, he checked his phone to confirm the time. The clock on the wall was indeed accurate. He was very late. He rushed to pack everything up and check on Izuku. He heard quiet voices coming from the kitchen, so he set his bag down and hurried over towards them. His eyes widened when he noticed that Yagi and Nedzu were still there. They were talking to each other while Aizawa finished making dinner. Hey, I'm sorry for coming back so late, Hizashi said sincerely while walking towards his husband. Where is Izuku? Hizashi inquired after pressing a quick apology kiss to Shuta's forehead. He was tired from training and fell asleep once we finished talking to him about our plan, Aizawa explained while adding some seasoning. Our plan? Hizashi echoed. I still think it will be risky, Yagi added. There are many reasons why we can't keep him locked up here when school starts, Nedzu reminded him. They already talked about them earlier with Izuku. Hizashi thought about it for a second before apprehensively asking, do you think it would be better for him to be around other kids? I need to keep an eye on him. Students will wonder why we have an empty building that is off limits, and it would negatively affect him if he was locked up here. I think it would be more beneficial for him to be around his age. We already created a cover story and Izuku thinks it would be helpful, Aizawa explained. Hizashi frowned while chewing on his lip. He was worried about Izuku but he trusted his husband. Well, since you guys already deeply considered this and Izuku agreed to it, I don't see a reason to argue. I just worry about him, Hizashi confessed. Aizawa nodded in understanding, and Hizashi offered to help cook dinner. Is it okay if I stay longer? I would like to know more about young Midoriya. Yagi asked while staring at the floor. Of course, Hisashi assured Yagi. Yamada. Izuku called as he walked into the kitchen. Hey little listener. How did training go? Hisashi asked. It was long but useful, Izuku answered while rubbing his eyes. I am glad that shoulda. Hisashi hissed with slanted as when he spotted Izuku's bruises. I held back more than I have on any other kid, Aizawa defended. Held back? Look at him. Hisashi gestured while trying not to yell at his husband. Though he wasn't completely successful. Yagi gestured for Izuku to follow him to a different room so he wouldn't have to listen to the couple's fight. Izuku was relieved to have a reason to leave. He and Yagi went to his room and talked about Yagi's job. Netsu grinned while watching the drama continue. Hisashi scolded his husband for a while before they went back to cooking dinner. While waiting for dinner to be done, Yagi got to know Izuku better. He was a very curious kid. Izuku enjoyed talking to Yagi because he was an interesting hero. He also had a lot of exciting stories about his job as the #1 hero. He also liked talking to Yagi because he reminded him of his uncle. He has very few memories of his uncle, but he felt safe when he thought of him. He could feel his uncle's spirit within Yagi. It made him feel as safe as his memories of his uncle. He felt like he still had a family with him. Dinner went well. Izuku liked having more people he felt comfortable with eat with him. Netsu and Yagi were fun to talk with. After Yagi insisted on taking the plates to the sink and washing them, Netsu turned to look at Izuku once more. I want to inform you, Izuku, that you will be meeting 3 older students from this school. We call them the Big Three. Mirai was working late when his cell phone went off with a familiar tune. It was the custom ringtone he set for All Might. He hadn't heard it since their fight. He immediately dropped his pen and grabbed his phone. He was so nervous he dropped it. They didn't talk for long. But Yagi promised to come to his agency to talk to him tomorrow. Mirai didn't sleep well that night. Because of all the visions he had seen, he usually didn't. He wondered why, after all this time, did Yagi want to talk to him? He also wanted extra time to gather his thoughts. This may be his only other chance to convince All Might to listen to him before his vision came true. The first time they met, it didn't go well. Yagi had wanted them to talk through their issues, but he didn't anticipate how passionate Mirai would be. Even with dark circles under them, his eyes shone with conviction. Yagi was just as firm on his position in the argument. After days of arguing, they finally understood the other's feelings. Mirai would always worry over his idol, and Yagi would reluctantly consider early retirement. After 2 more days spent catching up on each other's lives, Yagi brought up Izuku. There was a knock on the door that brought a smile to Mirai's face. He opened it for Yagi and started preparing jasmine tea. Mirai set a hot cup in front of Yagi before placing his down. What's on your mind? Mirai inquired between sips of his drink. I was speaking with Netsu and I want to meet young Tagata. I believe he would be an amazing successor, Yagi began hesitantly. Mirai tried to keep the proud smile off his face as he replied, Oh, and what makes you think that? I watched the video of last year's sports festival. While he did receive a low score, he tried hard and smiled the whole time, Yagi explained while his lips twitched upwards. Night Eye smiled for a second. His personality was the reason Night Eye believed he would be the one to replace All Might. I also learned that his hero name is Lemillion because he knows he can't rescue everyone, but he still plans to rescue at least 1 million people. His tests show that he is very knowledgeable about hero protocols and he genuinely wants to save people. I believe he has the heart of a true hero. Yagi coughed hard, and some blood flew out onto his sleeve. I also would like to talk to him about One for All as soon as possible. Not only so he can be my successor but also so he will be ready when he meets someone else who is deeply connected to One for All. The day before Murio was supposed to meet someone at UA with his friends, Murio was surprised to be called to Sir Night Eye's office. Murio sat across from Sir Night Eye and was startled by a harsh cough. He looked at the entrance and was concerned to see a skeleton-looking blonde man. Murio jumped to his feet and asked, Are you all right, sir? Should I call an ambulance? The man shook his head and pushed him away. There's no need for an ambulance. I called him here, Night Eye explained. Are you sure he shouldn't be in a hospital? Murio asked while staring at the blonde. I've already been to many hospitals. This is me at my best. Murio frowned, but sat down and turned to Night. Murio, I apologize for calling you suddenly. We have a very important matter to discuss. Sir Night, I said. Murio nodded in understanding. Meet Toshinori Yagi. We have a lot to tell you. Yagi, you should explain. Sir Night, I said. My quirk is called One for All. I am the 8th user of my quirk. As he said the last sentence, he transformed into All Might. Murio jumped in shock while wondering why he was sharing his secret with him. All Might? Murio asked as he leaned towards him. I am here. All Might replied, while smiling brightly. Then his shoulders slumped, and he transformed back into the emancipated man from before. My name is Toshinori Yagi, and I want to pass my quirk on to you. Of course, it's your choice, and I will explain everything important before asking you to make a decision. He assured Murio before taking a sip from a steaming mug. One for All is a quirk that is cultivated by its holder before it is passed down to the next person. It is then refined before being passed on again. In this way, those calling out to be saved and those with noble and true hearts link to form a crystalline network of power. Murio furrowed his brow as he realized the chaos that would ensue if the public found out about All Might's quirk. One for All can only be transferred willingly and through the absorption of my DNA. It is a stockpile quirk that increases one's physical abilities to a much higher level. It increases strength, agility, speed, and durability. Yagi paused to cough more and observe Murio's reaction to this new information. When it's transferred, the new user's body is not naturally adjusted to handle the quirk. One for All is a lot of power, so if you choose to become my successor, you must start doing even more intense physical training. I'll help you so you won't overdo it, but it would be a lot more work than training your quirk. However, I know that you would be able to handle it. You're extremely driven and dedicated to what you want to do. Yagi added with a warm smile. Murio looked down at seeing his idol smile so sweetly at him while complimenting him. His hero name was also inspired by the video where the reporter said that he saved like 1 million people. I plan to retire soon after I'm sure my successor is ready to carry on my legacy. All Might added, which surprised both Murio and Night-Eye. Every host since the second has been entrusted with the quirk as well as the duty of using it to stop the evil of All for One. Night-Eye's expression darkened as he stood to refill his and Yagi's teacups. Murio shook his head when he was silently offered a cup by Night-Eye. The first host of One for All was All for One's brother. Several decades ago, when quirks began to manifest for the first time, All for One's quirk manifested. His quirk allowed him to take quirks, use them for himself, and transfer them to others. He manipulated victims of bad quirks into being loyal to him, and he imprisoned Yoichi, his quirkless brother. Yagi made sure to emphasize quirkless. All for One forcibly gave a quirk to his brother that allowed him to stockpile power within his body. However, Yoichi already had a quirk. His quirk allowed him to transfer it to another person. The transference quirk and the power stockpiling quirk merged to form One for All. Yoichi eventually realized this. He knew his brother had to be stopped, and he tried to defeat All for One, but due to the large difference in their strength, he failed. He chose to entrust the quirk to future generations of heroes and hoped that they would be able to cultivate One for All and one day put a stop to All for One. He passed it on to the second user, who was of the heroes who had freed him from the prison cell where his brother was keeping him. Yagi paused here to clear his throat. All for One sought out One for All, and as a result, almost all the users of One for All fought him and were killed by his hand, but not before they each had the chance to pass on the quirk to a successor so that it could reach the future and elude the villain. The fourth user, Hikage, believed that he would not be able to defeat All for One and decided to use his turn with One for All to seclude himself and train the quirk to be as strong as possible. However, after 18 years, his body unexpectedly started to deteriorate. All for One attempted to steal One for All twice, first from the fifth user, Daigoro, and then from the sixth, N, but had failed both times. Yagi trembled and looked away for a second before he continued. The seventh user, Nana, was the last holder killed by his hand. I fought All for One and won the battle, but I was severely injured in the process. Sir Night-Eye tried to convince me to stop fighting, but I chose to continue fighting without choosing a successor, until recently. You have a selfless spirit and incredible drive to become a hero. I know that if you become my successor, I'll be able to retire happily. Murio held a tight grip on his chair for most of Yagi's explanation. Murio was too overwhelmed by all the information to do anything beyond staring. He was honored and happy that Yagi wanted to give him one for all, but he didn't want to agree without seriously considering the consequences, and if he was the best choice to succeed, all might. You don't have to give me your answer yet. It's better if you have time to process what I told you and consider it carefully. However, there is one more thing I would like to talk to you about. It pertains to why you and your friends are being called to UA over the break. Yagi started, while Murio tilted his head. You and your friends will be helping a boy. He is certainly a special case. He is the son of All for One, Sir Night-Eye disclosed. Murio wrinkled his nose when he heard that. Why would they be helping the son of such an evil man? Yagi ran his hands through his hair before clarifying. His name is Midoriya Izuku, and he has gone through more than any 15-year-old ever should. His father kidnapped him and treated him badly. He never truly had the chance to be a child. He's malnourished and can barely eat anything. While he didn't tell me this explicitly, we had him use his quirk on someone he trusts, and that made it clear that he was forced to do things he didn't want to do. He described the use of his quirk as mind-numbing, the worst pain most people will ever feel, being burned, and melting at the same time. Yagi paused as Murio's eyes widened in understanding. If the pain was that bad, they wouldn't be able to tell him. And he used such descriptive words because he's experienced a lot of pain. And maybe even been burned badly before? Murio asked while paling. I fear so. He had many scars. In a lot of places. Many of them didn't appear self-inflicted and were consistent with repeated child abuse. Yagi affirmed with a curled lip. He also said that he can enhance a quirk's strength when he takes it. That he can return someone's quirk when it's stronger, but they normally don't survive. Murio and Night-Eye both looked green, and Murio walked to the nearby bathroom to vomit. 15 was so young, and if he had a lot of scars, that meant he'd been with his father for a long time. How many dead bodies had he seen? How many corpses did he blame himself for creating? How young was he when it first happened? How many blamed and cursed him as the light left their eyes? Murio took a few minutes to wipe his tears and breath deeply before he returned. He accepted the cup of chamomile vanilla tea from Night-Eye with a grateful smile that looked more like a grimace. He swished the drink around his mouth to rid himself of the taste, and then turned to look at Yagi and Night. His mother helped him escape from that monster, but Izuku doesn't remember much of what happened after. He just knows that his mother came up with a plan that did not end well. Yagi paused while the implication of what happened to his mother hung unsaid in the air. Less than a month ago, a pro-hero responded to a call about a collapsed building. He evacuated everyone and returned to the scene to ensure that he saved everyone when he noticed a trapdoor. He went through it and found himself in a basement. In it was a frozen boy with a carving pronouncing him the son of All for One. I was informed of this as he was rushed to the hospital. He eventually awoke and later had a terrible panic attack. That activated his quirk and scared the nurse tending to him. Thankfully, the pro-hero who saved him was able to calm him down. Murio fought the urge to expel his guts with a long swallow of tea. It grounded him enough to focus on Yagi's words once more. He is at UA, where we can keep an eye on him. We invited you and your friends so he can be around kids his age. Well, close to his age. Yagi amended. Murio nodded and promised to do his best to help him and to tell Night-Eye as soon as he made his decision. They stayed for a few more minutes in silence while finishing their respective teacups. Yagi left first, in a hurry to go stop a nearby criminal. Murio started to leave when Night-Eye called him back. Sir Night? He asked in response. I'm proud of you for coming this far. I know you'll make a great successor, Night-Eye said, before turning back to his paperwork. Long after Murio had said goodnight to Nijire and Tamaki and agreed to meet them at a cafe for breakfast, he laid in bed staring at the ceiling. He would never be able to imagine what Izuku went through. The closest he could fathom was terrible enough. Though he couldn't carry or remove the pain from Izuku, there were still ways he could help him. In his empty room, he promised the ceiling that he would help Izuku no matter what. You two are so mean. How dare you run away and leave me to pay the check? We all had breakfast there. Nijire huffed as she caught up to the other two, who were walking close together. Maybe if you paid more often, we would have suggested splitting the bill. Murio teased her. Tamaki whispered in Murio's ear, paid more often? She hasn't paid since we met her. Murio laughed. If you two lovebirds just wanted privacy to flirt, you could have asked me to leave and then paid the bill yourselves. She emphasized the last part unhappily. Tamaki reddened and looked down. I'll pay next time, Murio assured her while ruffling Tamaki's hair. You better. I'm not made of money. She grumbled with a grin. Their conversation ended as they arrived at their destination. Wow, this new building is huge. And it's all for one person? Nijire questioned. Yes, it is. We're here to help him, remember? So let's not overwhelm him. Murio cheered. Why give us this responsibility? I'm sure there are far better people that could help. Tamaki muttered. Well, Nedzu and Aizawa thought it would be better for him if he interacted with kids his age. Plus, as heroes, it's our job to help someone in need. Murio stated proudly. Tamaki shuddered in fear, and Nijire cheered on Murio. With all this positive energy, he will surely adjust to his new home. I wonder what he looks like, Nijire said while bouncing towards the building. Well, we're about to find out, Murio said. Tamaki was shaking but started walking with help from Murio's encouragement. This must be really important to Murio. He's really determined to help. I don't blame him after hearing his story, Tamaki thought, seeing Murio run towards the building. Izuku had just finished training with Aizawa and he was exhausted. His body wasn't used to constant training, so it was tiring for him. They're here. Be cautious, they can be a lot sometimes, but they are great heroes, Aizawa informed him. Izuku nodded and was waiting for a knock to come from the door when he noticed that the wall looked wrong. With his head tilted, Izuku went to investigate the wall before jumping back in fear. Someone's head was sticking out of the wall. Izuku screamed in terror and curled in on himself. He was shaking and rocking back and forth. Aizawa ran back and prepared to fight but untensed once he saw what caused Izuku's distress. He pinched his nose and opened the door to let the other two in. Then he walked back towards Izuku and offered him a hug. He shakily accepted and calmed down once he noticed that Aizawa wasn't worried. I thought you said not to overwhelm, Tamaki said dryly as he entered the room. Izuku pulled away with a frown. Is this normal? He asked. Yes, it is, Nijire chirped. Oh, I'm sorry. Murio apologized. Murio, you should change back in that room, you startled problem child enough, Aizawa said while pointing to an empty room. Wow, he already has a nickname for him, Murio marveled. Here are your clothes, Tamaki said as he held a messy bundle of clothes up. Get changed in another room. You have freaked Izuku enough for one day, Aizawa sternly insisted. Oh, I am really sorry. This is probably really weird for you, huh? Murio realized. Go to the room next door so you can change, Aizawa ordered. Murio quickly fled and Tamaki followed to give Murio his clothes. These are the students you talked about? Izuku asked. He had sat down on the couch next to Aizawa while waiting for the other two to return. Yes, they are. Introduce yourselves, Aizawa commanded. My name is Hada Nijire, that boy with the dark hair is Amajiki Tamaki, and the boy with the floating head is Tagata Murio, Nijire said. I am Midoriya Izuku, it's a pleasure to meet you, Izuku said as he stood to give a small bow. Ah, aren't you so cute? How many freckles do you have? Is your hair naturally that color? What's it like living here? Is Aizawa really watching you? Why are you so skinny? Nijire fired question after question without stopping to take a breath. Izuku was a little flustered by the last question. Thanks. I don't know, I haven't counted in a long time. Yes, my hair does look like this. Living here has been really nice. Yes, Aizawa has been watching me. Izuku looked down at the floor, hesitant to answer the last question. That's irrelevant. Nijire, please control yourself and your questions. Aizawa answered for him. All right. We aren't supposed to overwhelm him. My apologies. Nijire said as she stood from her couch and offered a bow. I invited you three here to help him, not to freak him out more, Izawa reminded them. So sorry about that, it's a habit of mine. Murio interrupted as he entered the room. It's okay. I was just startled. Izuku assured him. Please forgive me, I was excited. Murio apologized. It's fine really. Izuku insisted. It's nice to meet you. I heard a lot about you. Murio said cheerfully as he sat down next to Nijire. Thank you, Izuku said, while tilting his head. I'm so useless here, I really shouldn't be here. Tamaki lamented as he pushed his face into the wall. Please don't be upset. I just don't know what I am supposed to do. Izuku apologized while drooping. Give him some time for him to get used to you. He can get nervous. Anyways, why don't we do something? Put a smile on your face and let's have some fun. Murio cheered. Nijire cheered with Murio and Tamaki groaned into the wall. Izawa sighed while wishing he made more coffee before they arrived. Izuku twitched his lips upwards, but it didn't feel comfortable or right. As Izuku struggled to smile for a bit, Murio stared at Izuku in surprise, and Izawa's eyes widened. Izuku hadn't smiled once since he had awoken from the ice. He couldn't blame the kid. He has been going through a lot and probably hadn't found a reason to smile yet. I'm sorry. I haven't smiled in a long time. I think the last time I smiled was when I was 5, I believe. I'm sorry. Izuku apologized while staring at the floor. He was ashamed and embarrassed that he couldn't do something as simple as smiling. Don't apologize, sweetie. We heard what your life was like. I am sorry you had to go through that. We are here for you if you need it. Nijire promised. Izuku nodded slowly in response. We can make some food if you want. Tamaki murmured while removing his face from the wall. That's a great idea. Let's do that. Murio said excitedly. Nijire congratulated Tamaki, and he shied away from her. Izuku watched them and felt a little excited. Hey, Izuku, can I talk to you privately? Murio asked softly. Izuku inclined his head in agreement and the two walked into the room Murio had changed in earlier. I know what happened to you. I am so sorry for everything that has happened to you. Murio sincerely offered. Izuku turned pale and shuddered. I am going to be the next one for all user. I wanted to tell you since it's your uncle's quirk. Murio explained. No, it's not. It hasn't been my uncle's quirk for years. Izuku said somberly. Izuku, you are so brave. I can't ever accurately imagine what you are going through. I want to help in any way possible. Thank you, Tagata. It means a lot to me, Izuku replied. As Murio stared at the freckle-faced boy, he had a realization. He now had a mission. He was determined to complete this mission. Midoriya, I have a new mission that involves you. Murio declared and Izuku stared in bewilderment. He smiled excitedly as he grabbed Izuku's hand. Izuku blinked at him in response. I am going to get you to smile no matter what. Izuku was staring at the ceiling. He hated his bed. He liked how comfortable his bed was, but he despised what lying in this bed meant. He always woke up terrified, but he couldn't remember any of them. It drove him crazy. His eyes traced the patterns in the ceiling while he wished Aizawa or Yamada were here. He felt safest with them. He recalled Yamada saying he was going to bring their cats. He was excited because he had never been around animals before. He was forbidden from being near animals. He had seen cats from afar and he thought they were cute. He slowly drifted off to sleep while imagining what petting them would feel like. Izuku had just misbehaved for the first time. He hadn't wanted to kill anyone. He knew it wasn't right. He told his dad so and was shocked when he was yelled at and had to witness his dad kill the other. His father slowly and brutally took the other's life. He even healed him after he was on the brink of death, only to start all over again and, eventually, end his life. Izuku vomited multiple times before his dad tossed the corpse aside and grabbed his arm. Izuku knew something bad was going to happen and fought to free his arm. He ended up being dragged so hard that his arm dislocated and his legs had rug burn. He was shoved into a dark room he'd never seen before and his dad said, "Here's your new test subject. I trust that you will return him breathing." Then his dad closed the door and left. Izuku stared terrified at this stranger and his frightening room. There were boxes with weird names and a lot of refrigerators labeled things such as limbs, organs, and brains. He started shaking as the stranger forced him into a wooden chair and pulled his shirt off. He tried to fight him, but one can only do so much with a dislocated arm. He was quickly restrained and wiped down with circular wipes. Sticky circles connected to wires were placed on him, and he shivered from the cold in the man's expression. He wasn't sure what to expect when the man pushed a button. But a tingling, uncomfortable sensation was not what he expected. The stranger frowned and moved a dial near the button. It quickly moved from uncomfortable to a piercing pain in his arms, legs, and stomach. He started crying and screaming. The doctor turned the machine off and dug through his equipment. He put headphones in and grinned at Izuku. The room's soundproof and I have loud music playing now. Scream until your throat is raw, little one. No one will save you. Your dad knew what I would do to you. Yet he brought you here. The stranger laughed maniacally before turning it up even higher. Eventually, it was turned up so high that Izuku couldn't scream if he wanted to, and there was a faint green aura surrounding him. His muscles spasmed, and he was worried he would die. He knew his dad wanted him back breathing. But what if the man killed him anyway? The pain was so intense and burned him everywhere. Then, after a while, it stopped. Izuku was left in extreme pain, with a headache and blurry vision. The man came up to him and touched his electrical burns. He traced them for a few seconds before pulling away. Izuku was too tired to consider struggling, but he didn't like the weird sensation. Then the burning pain disappeared, and the man walked away. Izuku fainted as the sound of the door closing reached him. Sadly, he soon regained consciousness while his arm was being popped back into the socket. The pain was immense, and he saw white for a minute. As he blinked it away, he realized he was face down on something. It reminded him of a bed, but thinner and harder. He tried to move, but his limbs felt too heavy to do more than twitch. Hello, Izuku. I'm the doctor. Have you heard of acupuncture? The doctor waited for a beat before adding, I don't think you would have. Acupuncture comes from ancient China. One pricks another person's skin with needles. But they can only prick certain spots, or else nerve root compression may occur, which could require surgical treatment. The doctor explained with an animated voice. Izuku was too exhausted to shiver, but he resolved to avoid unnecessary movements. The doctor began inserting needles into Izuku. He wondered if Izuku's quirk would be activated by the intrusions. Izuku started to squirm a bit from how uncomfortable it was. Oops, I placed it in the wrong spot. Are you in any pain? The doctor asked without removing the needles. It really hurts? Izuku gasped out, hoping he'd remove the needle. Oh really? Why don't you describe it? The doctor asked with faux innocence. The needle was still there. Izuku stayed silent while the spot burned. The doctor frowned at his refusal to answer and left. Ensuring he slammed the door behind himself. Izuku was unsure how long he laid there with multiple needles in his back while waiting helplessly. He just knew it was too long. Eventually, the doctor returned and removed the needles. He examined Izuku's back and announced, It appears you have nerve root compression. Which means I'll have to cut you open? He gleefully explained. Izuku wanted to cry or shout his refusal, but he was too tired. He just lay there waiting for more pain to be inflicted upon him. I can only heal what I can touch. So I'll have to open you up and then touch your nerve and the surrounding areas, the doctor claimed. Izuku blinked in confusion before remembering the man's quirk and how it felt. Some adrenaline ran through him, and he was able to briefly sit up and plead that he did not do that before his eyes rolled back into his head. He sat down on his bed and rubbed his eyes hard before a sob escaped him. He began shaking and curled up into a ball. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He tried so hard to keep everyone safe, but no matter how hard he tried, it didn't work. Nothing ever worked. He was tired of people dying in front of him. He wanted to save them, but he couldn't. He kept shaking and sobbing until the door opened and Izuku heard his footsteps. He quickly uncurled from the ball and started painfully squeezing his wrists to stop crying. His father beckoned him to follow him. As he succeeded, he started following his father while wiping his eyes and mouth. He didn't want to do this. Please, don't make him do this again, he thought while trembling. As they entered the room, Izuku stared at the next victim. He couldn't have been older than 19. The boy looked terrified for his life. He struggled to free himself from being strapped on the table, but it was pointless. Then his eyes met Izuku's. Hey kid. Help me out here. Please. He pleaded. Izuku wanted nothing more than to help him, however, he knew it was useless. His quirk is simple but has the potential to be powerful. He can manipulate Earth. It is currently extremely weak, you know what to do. His father explained. I can't. Izuku protested. Yes, you can, little bunny. His father said darkly. He is going to die. I don't want to kill him. Izuku cried out. He couldn't do it again. He knew they were going to die no matter how hard he tried to keep them alive. If you only try harder, then they wouldn't die, bunny. His father sneered. I do. It won't work. Please don't make me. Not again. Izuku was crying. He couldn't take it anymore. Bunny, you have to work harder to keep them alive. After all, you have the power. It is not my fault if they do not live. It's yours. Now stop complaining or I will kill him myself, on purpose, he promised. Izuku blanched. He was going to die one way or another. No, please. I don't want to die. Kid, please help me. Izuku's victim shouted. Lamb, you know he has a chance of living. You need to become better at this, through practice, his father insisted icily. Kid, please help. Do whatever it is, I just don't want to die, he pleaded. No, he won't make it. He will dash, Izuku argued while staring at his next victim. Yes, he will if you try harder. Do I have to kill him because you are being difficult? His father asked sharply. No, please, dash, Izuku cut himself off when his father abruptly moved to block his view of the young boy. Then do it or you will make it worse. His father said as he looked down at his son coldly. Izuku shuffled his feet and gave in. Izuku knew his father wouldn't show this victim mercy. He would make sure his death would be brutal as a form of punishment for Izuku's refusal. Good, now hurry up, his father said. Tears fell down Izuku's cheeks as he went over to the man. He offered an apologetic look. He took this man's quirk, made it stronger, and gave it back. Izuku watched as his body began to destroy itself. He tried to heal it as much as he could. Please don't die. Izuku thought as he tried desperately to keep him alive. You brat. What the hell did you do to me? He shouted weakly at Izuku. He ignored him as best as he could. You are trying to kill me. I'll kill you when this is over. He continued and started cursing Izuku out. He can't die, don't die, please don't die, were the only thoughts running through Izuku's head. The poor child was trying to keep this man alive as much as he could. He turned his head to look for his father, only to find he had already left the room. He should have expected it, but he hated being alone. The boy did his best, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't working. He needed to save the stranger, but he was failing. He was dying right in his arms and Izuku could do nothing. The light left his eyes soon after. He heard the door open from behind him. Izuku, what went wrong? His father asked in a cloyingly sweet tone. I tried, I really did, I swear. And nothing was working and Izuku started bawling. He felt a hand brush through his hair. He stiffened in confusion. Izuku, there is no need to stop yourself from crying. I am sorry for being mean, you just can be very difficult sometimes. Now, what was something you learned? His father delivered lovingly. He sounded like his real father, the man that would help him with nightmares, make him feel better, and would hug him when he was sad. That man, however, was no longer here. He hadn't been there since Izuku's quirk manifested. The yelling is distracting, Izuku said. See? You can always learn something. Good job, my son, he said as he picked up his son. He was still shaking but was no longer crying. The thing he hated most about this was he had taken that poor man's quirk as a last-minute attempt to save him, but it was too late. Izuku had killed another person. Izuku is taller now, yet his dad could still make him feel tiny. He learned a lot in the years he spent with his father. Being obedient and silent was the only way he could survive. And avoid being punished or seeing the doctor. His father was a curious man. He wanted to learn more about quirks, how they affect a body, and what they could do to make them stronger. However, his father wasn't a willing subject. On the other hand, he was completely fine with his son filling that role. He only allowed his son to be experimented on whenever he disobeyed him. Today was one of those days. Izuku was sitting strapped to a chair. Reminiscent of one found in a dentist's room, but Izuku was not visiting a dentist. Izuku's anxiety was slowly consuming his thoughts. He just wanted it to start so it would end faster. That was when he walked in. The doctor came in with a bright smile. As if nothing was wrong in the world. "Good day, Izuku. How is everything?" he asked. Izuku hated how relaxed he seemed. He unconsciously flexed his still bandaged nail beds. They had only just begun to grow back. His toes' nail beds hadn't even started growing back yet. I am okay," he stated. It wasn't a lie. He just didn't want to be here. Nothing good ever happened when he was near the doctor. "Now, Izuku, we are going to try something new. You know every living being has instincts. Even humans, granted, we don't rely on them as much as other animals, but we have them nonetheless. Now that we have quirks, our instincts might change. I want to see just how much they have changed," the doctor announced. Izuku was terrified to see how this was going to be tested. "I recently got my hands on a new drug. Let me tell you about it. It is very interesting. You see, it prevents you from being able to move your body at all, but you are still aware of everything. You can still move your eyes and feel pain too. Isn't that exciting?" he said as he examined Izuku's arm. He injected the drug into Izuku's largest vein. Terror rushed through Izuku. The drug was slow-acting, yet he could feel the effects slowly hitting him. His arms began to feel heavier, as did his legs. Soon he couldn't even twitch his toes. So our experiment today is to see how much our instincts have changed since quirks. We are going to test it today. It started with small cuts, which didn't bother Izuku that much. He could handle it. The cuts quickly became bigger and deeper. Izuku wanted to scream, but all he could do was cry. He was unable to flinch, move, or defend himself. He was forced to stare through blurry eyes as the doctor inflicted more and more injuries. Izuku began to feel more and more helpless. All he could do was sit there pathetically. His cuts began to burn. The doctor was rubbing something in the wounds. Izuku didn't have a clue when was being put in his wounds. It might have been salt. Izuku didn't care. What mattered was that it was unbelievably painful. He desperately wanted to scream or defend himself. He was unaware of the green lighting surrounding him. Interesting response, Izuku. Well, it's time to increase the severity of injuries being inflicted. I will now start breaking your fingers and we will continue to work our way up. We might even do burning. Now don't give me that look, the doctor said with pure joy written all over his face. More tears streamed down Izuku's face. The doctor started to trace the wounds with his fingers. Izuku hated this. He felt like bugs were crawling under his skin. As he stopped tracing the wounds, they began to heal themselves. His quirk was useful for his work. Once all those wounds healed, the doctor brought the scalpel to his face and began to cut an X on his face. Izuku wished he could move or even scream, but it was useless. All he could do was cry. We have only just begun. I can't wait to see what more we can do. Tell me, Izuku, how much pain can you handle? Izuku sprang up in bed. He had tears falling down his face and he couldn't stop shaking. Izuku, breathe, he told himself. Once Izuku felt more relaxed, he looked around his room. Nothing new was added except some clothes. Izuku got up from bed trying to recall his dreams, but he was failing. Slowly, his dreams and his memories were being forgotten. Izuku laid down on his bed, frustrated that he forgot his dreams once more. He got up and read the time. It was 6 in the morning. Not ideal, but he knew he wouldn't be able to fall asleep again anytime soon. He went downstairs to see Aizawa sleeping on the couch. Yamada was looking in the fridge but turned when he heard Izuku come down. Morning, little listener. Nice to see you up and about. Our cats are in the living room, he said with a smile. Izuku instantly felt last night's excitement return and chase away the last of his nerves. He ran to the living room to see 3 cats. A gray cat that was sleeping with Aizawa, a white fluffy cat that was exploring their new surroundings, and a black cat that was lying on the ground looking like it owned the place. The gray cat, his name is Hiccup, the white cat, her name is Cloud, and finally our black cat, his name is Ace. Careful with Ace, he is super dramatic, Yamada warned. Izuku fiddled with his shirt. He was scared he was going to hurt them. Hey, it's okay, they won't bite. Well, Cloud won't, she wouldn't hurt a fly. Hiccup is too tired to do anything, and don't bother with Ace, Yamada informed Izuku. Izuku stared at their pets and moved to sit on the floor. Cloud was the first cat to pat up to him. She was gentle with him, which was helpful for Izuku. Cloud is a good girl. You can pet her, don't be scared, Yamada encouraged him. It took a while, but Izuku did start to pet the white fluffy cat. He enjoyed it a lot, so did Cloud. Ace stood up and walked over to Izuku. Izuku stared at Yamada, not sure what to do. Pet him. He never does this. Yamada shared, somewhat jealous. Izuku did, and Ace enjoyed it. Ace liked being petted by Izuku. He lit up. Izuku had never been more excited. Shoyuta. How come Ace doesn't do that with me? Yamada questioned his husband. You're loud, Aizawa said without bothering to open his eyes. Yamada kept questioning his husband while Izuku continued petting Ace and Cloud. I really like cats. They are really cute. Izuku thought as he petted them. Before Aizawa knew it, the entrance exam was coming up. Izuku has been living in the UA dormitory for about 2 months now, and he was showing small signs of improvement with both his social skills and his quirk. Izuku hadn't completely caught up with modern times since Yamada was too busy/tired to help. On the other hand, Aizawa didn't help as he himself didn't understand/care for modern things, such as social media, and the big three were no help. They were too busy trying to make Izuku smile, which was proven to be quite difficult. The kid had zero understanding of social cues. He was unaware of kind gestures, jokes, and the idea of kindness in general. So the big three spent most of their time teaching Izuku all of this. Even though he was aware of this, he still had a hard time processing it. He couldn't accept that someone would be nice without an ulterior motive. It was both very frustrating and depressing. However, the big three were determined to get Izuku smiling, even though they continued to fail. Izuku was reading The Guest Cat by Takashi Hirate. Tamaki had given him the book. He was hesitant to accept it, but Tamaki pointed to the cat on the cover and said that Chibi reminded him of Ace. Izuku thanked him before setting it aside and giving him a quick hug. Tamaki was surprised, so he didn't hug back before Izuku sat back down, but he was pleased that Izuku decided to hug him. Izuku was thankful for the book, but he was still trying to figure out the actual reason behind the big three's kindness. He jumped slightly when he heard a knock on the door. Then he remembered why he was waiting near the door. He put the floral bookmark back in and then opened the door. Hey Midoriya. I will get you to smile today. Murio greeted him as he walked into the room and ruffled Midoriya's hair. Tamaki followed close behind while tugging on his black sweater sleeve. Nijire sauntered in with her phone in her hand. Hi Midoriya, today we're going to listen to music together. And we also brought ice cream for later. We weren't sure which was your favorite, so we bought 5 and some cones, which we will show you later. All 3 of us have picked a few songs we like and think you might like and made a playlist of them. Nijire informed him while waving her phone. The other 2 took a bag and a small box to the kitchen. Are we going to listen to this playlist on your phone? Izuku asked curiously while watching Nijire move to sit on one of the sofas. He knew that people could talk to each other on phones. He'd seen Aizawa do so with Hizashi and other people before. Aizawa tried to explain it, but Izuku still wasn't sure how it worked. I can show you how to access music on a phone if you'd like. She asked him. Izuku nodded his head while he moved to sit next to her. Tamaki and Murio returned and sat on the couch across from them with a lot of space in between them. He watched with interest as she scrolled through a lot of colorful squares before selecting a green and black square. He watched as she pressed your library and then playlists. That's a lot of mixes. He noted aloud. I really enjoy listening to music, she offered. She pressed the playlist titled Smile. He was surprised to see that he couldn't read every title. While he could read some songs like Bubble Tea, Dreamscape, and Pon Pon Pon, he noticed that the other song titles weren't in a language he was familiar with. What does that say? He asked while pointing to one of the unfamiliar titles. Those are English songs. This one is Would You Be So Kind, that one is Sunkissed, this one is Sophia, and that one is Hall of Fame. If you want, I could pull up the translations for you when they're playing. I don't think we have a Japanese-English dictionary. He replied while moving to get up. He was going to find Aizawa to ask about one when Nijire's voice stopped him. You don't need to go find one. The translations are also on my phone. I'll show you when the English songs come on. Oh, he replied while awkwardly sitting back down. He liked the first few songs, but he didn't think they were life-changing. He glanced at Nijire sitting beside him before turning to look at Tamaki and Murio. They sat close together and Tamaki had his head on Murio's shoulder. Izuku looked back at Nijire and was surprised to see that she was on a different screen. Hall of Fame is the next song, and it's really inspiring. Even if you can't understand the lyrics, I think you'll enjoy listening to it more with the lyrics. So I was pulling up the translations. Tada! She said proudly, handing him a screen that showed lyrics for Hall of Fame. Wow, thank you, he said while looking at the screen. Out of all the songs they listened to, he ended up enjoying Hall of Fame the most. The music and the lyrics paired together stirred an unfamiliar feeling in him. Though he still couldn't smile, he felt lighter while listening to the song. Especially as he glanced at the three in the room and thought about how much they did for him in the short time he'd known them. As Sophia was ending, Tamaki and Murio offered to grab the ice cream and cones. Nijire stood up to help, but Izuku's voice stopped her. Does it upset you that they seem to be closer friends with each other than you? She sat back down and looked at him quizzically. What do you mean? He fidgeted before replying with, they usually sit together and hold hands or lie their heads on each other's shoulders. Nijire laughed for a second before claiming, I don't like physical touch as much as them. I also like sorting next to you. How else could I count all of your face freckles? She reached out her hand and ruffled his hair while laughing. It's sweet of you to worry, but we're definitely all best friends. We're back, Murio announced excitedly with 4 ice cream boxes held against his chest. Tamaki brought one more in and a box of sugar cones. They both set the containers down and Murio went back to the kitchen to get a spoon while Tamaki turned to Izuku. We weren't sure which ice cream flavor was your favorite, so we bought a few different ones. You can have 3 scoops. Which flavors do you want? Tamaki murmured. Thank you, Izuku trailed off while staring at the containers. He wasn't sure which ones he would prefer. Murio returned with 2 freshly washed spoons and handed one to Tamaki. I recommend having a scoop of chocolate. It's really good, Murio said enthusiastically as he added 1 scoop of vanilla to her cone. The best flavor is clearly cookies and cream. And it goes well with chocolate? Tamaki offered as he smiled at Murio, who looked up from where he was adding a scoop of matcha to Nijire's cone. Murio smiled back before they both returned to their previous tasks. You should definitely have some vanilla. It's my favorite, and it's the most popular flavor of ice cream, Nijire suggested as she grabbed the ice cream cone from Murio and thanked him. Then I'll have those 3 please, Izuku answered Tamaki warmly. Tamaki added 1 scoop of each in the order they were suggested before giving the cone to Izuku. Thank you, Izuku said before trying the vanilla ice cream at the top. We're also going to leave the leftover ice cream here so you can try soda and matcha another time, Nijire informed him. Izuku licked his ice cream while watching as Murio finished Tamaki's cone and Tamaki quickly made one for Murio. Murio's was 2 scoops of chocolate with a scoop of soda in between them. Tamaki's was just cookies and cream. As Izuku reached his 2nd scoop of ice cream, he asked curiously, which song did you all like the most? Sophia is my favorite, Tamaki replied quietly. It's a tie between Dreamscape and Would You Be So Kind, Nijire chirped. Mine is definitely Hall of Fame. Murio passionately added. It's mine too. I love how the song makes you feel. Izuku agreed. Me too. It's my favorite because it's a song for everyone about how we all can strive to be our best selves and help people with a smile, Murio described. Izuku nodded while finishing the 2nd scoop of ice cream. On the day of the entrance exam, Izuku found himself speaking with Nedzu before he left. Are you sure I can come? Izuku inquired. Yes, you can. You know the layout of the school, so you can guide yourself if you are okay with that? Nedzu questioned. Yes, I think I can manage. Can I make a request? Izuku asked hesitantly. Nedzu nodded. Can you find out what happened to my mother? He asked. Nedzu stiffened at the question. It's just I want to know how she died, maybe where she is buried. I want to pay my respects properly and see her again. Izuku explained. Midoriya Inko was her name, correct? Nedzu asked, and Izuku hopefully bobbed his head. I will find her for you. I promise, Nedzu said. Izuku sighed out of relief before thanking him profusely. He turned to leave before the clearing of Nedzu's throat stopped him. Do you remember what she looked like? When Izuku didn't answer fast enough, Nedzu frowned and added, do you remember her ever mentioning her family? Izuku felt dread after the intense look in Nedzu's eyes but tried to push it down. Do you remember her hobbies or any friends she had? Izuku shook his head nervously. Nedzu blinked before relaxing his posture. I'm sorry for asking so many questions, but it would be easier to find her if I knew more about her. He explained. I understand. Izuku tried to say honestly, he knew it made sense, but he felt uncomfortable after talking to him. Izuku decided to watch some shows before making his way to school. After observing other students, Izuku began to realize how out of place he was compared to everyone else. Hey Midoriya. Izuku turned to see Murio, Nijire, and Tamaki coming towards him. Hey guys. Izuku said. What brings you here? Murio asked. I am trying to find Aizawa. We are going to observe the entrance exams, he explained. Oh, have fun with that. You will get to see many quirks there. Did you bring your notebook? Murio asked. Izuku nodded and held his notebook up for a few seconds. Izuku loved to write about quirks. He found every quirk amazing. Murio remembered the first time Izuku asked him questions about his quirk. He gave Nijire a run for her money with questions. However Murio loved it, it showed progress. Better hurry. We don't want to keep you waiting. I will get you to smile today, Murio said. You say that every time you see him, Tamaki pointed out. He is being optimistic, Nijire said. Izuku fondly watched them banter between themselves. I need to go. I will see you guys later, Izuku said before hurrying away. Izuku was headed towards the entrance. He kept staring at everyone because there were so many quirks, and he wanted to learn about them. He wasn't paying attention when he tripped. Izuku braced himself, but he didn't fall to the ground. It took him a minute to realize he was floating. He freaked before he heard someone say, sorry. I should have asked to use my quirk. Izuku looked up at a girl with brown hair and brown eyes. It's okay. Can you put me down, please? Izuku pleaded. She tapped her fingers and Izuku fell. She offered her hand and Izuku used it to get up. Your quirk, is it a levitation quirk, or can you manipulate gravity? Izuku asked without thinking. Something like that, the girl answered. Hey, can you leave her alone? We have an important test to focus on, shouted a tall boy with dark blue hair and glasses at Izuku. Izuku jumped at the unexpected shouting. I am sorry. I need to get going. Izuku bowed as he ran off. Izuku started mentally freaking out as he realized he had just talked to a girl for the first time and he was late. Aizawa was going to kill him. While Izuku was hurrying towards the entrance exam observation room, he noticed Hizashi. Hizashi was searching for Izuku. He was supposed to show up but he wasn't here. He knew they should have walked with him. What if he got lost? Yamada. I'm sorry I'm late. I got distracted. Midoriya apologized loudly as he ran over to him. Everything all right, little listener? He asked. Why yeah, I talked to someone that was the same age as me. Izuku answered excitedly. Really? Tell me more about it later, okay? Now head to the back. I have to talk to our potential new students. Hizashi said. Izuku nodded as Hizashi went the other way. Aizawa was worried about his problem child, so when his husband went to look for him, Aizawa felt a little relieved. He knew Izuku was going to find him soon, but he still couldn't help but feel paranoid until Izuku came up to him. Problem child, you took your time? I am sorry. I got distracted. Izuku apologized while fidgeting more than he normally did. What happened? Aizawa asked. I met with Murio and his friends for a bit. Then I tripped, but someone used their quirk to keep me from falling. I talked to her, to a girl for the first time. She was really nice. Her quirk is some kind of gravity quirk. I wish I could have talked to her longer. Anyways, a boy told me to stop bothering them and I realized I was late. Midoriya rambled. Aizawa frowned when Izuku mentioned to him that another kid told him off, but he assumed it was due to stress. This test was a big deal and Izuku would have stood out to them. Well, you are here now. So you get to watch everyone take the test. Aizawa's next sentence was interrupted by, "Show Yuta. Is that him?" Izuku jumped up and Aizawa let out a loud groan. "This is going to be a long day," Aizawa said. Izuku turned to the voice and introduced himself. "I'm Izuku. I know," Kiyama interrupted. "Show Yuta just told me you were coming. Do you know who I am?" Izuku shook his head nervously. "Show Yuta? I can't believe you never mentioned me to him. I'm Namuri Kiyama, also known as the Pro Hero Midnight. I teach modern hero art history. It's nice to meet you. Do you have a quirk?" Izuku asked hopefully. "I certainly do. My quirk is called Somnambulist, and it allows me to release a pink aroma from my body. It can put others to sleep almost instantly. My quirk seems to work better on men than women. Why do you think that is? Can it change colors? How far does it spread? Is it affected by things you eat or drink? One question at a time, please," Kiyama said while smiling at his enthusiasm. Izuku and Kiyama spent the whole written test chatting their lungs out. They jumped from different topics quickly, such as what he thought of Aizawa, if he'd met their cats yet, and what Izuku's hobbies were. It was insane to Aizawa, however, the physical test was about to start, which Izuku was excited about. "He is adorable. Zawa, how could you hide him from me?" Kiyama complained. Aizawa hated lying to Kiyama. She was one of his closest friends and helped him through tough times. So lying to her about Izuku was tough on not just him, but on his husband as well. They had to for Izuku's safety, but Aizawa still hated it. "We had to for the ongoing investigation, anyways. Pay attention," Aizawa replied. "I will get answers out of you both later," Kiyama declared. Great, that was going to be fun, Aizawa thought pleasantly. As the physical test continued, Izuku kept muttering a lot. The other teachers would stare at him in confusion until Aizawa gave them a "look away or else you'll deal with me" look. Luckily, the teachers listened. "Oh, that's her," Izuku said excitedly while he pointed at the screen. Aizawa inserted girls into the filter and searched through the files until he got her name. "Her name is Uraraka Ochako," Aizawa told Izuku. Hey, what is happening?" Izuku asked. He started freaking out upon seeing Uraraka get buried under rubble as a zero-pointer approached her. Shudo had just finished getting ready for the day when his father threw Shudo's bedroom door open. "It is time for you to train," Endeavor announced before staking off to the training room. Shudo followed him silently. They began sparring without powers to warm up. After 8 minutes, Endeavor began using his flames. Shudo easily blocked it with some ice. Endeavor's lips pressed together as he sent more flames towards Shudo. They were also blocked quickly. Endeavor narrowed his eyes and said, "The recommendation exam is coming up soon. You need to start training with your flames so you can fulfill your destiny. You need to learn how to control your flames if you're ever going to surpass me. I don't need to use your power to surpass you. I'll do well in the exams using only ice and then I'll become the #1 hero without ever using your flames. No, you need to use your flames. You weren't blessed with 2 quirks, only to use 1. It's your destiny to become my masterpiece by using both of the quirks you have." They continued to argue with slightly raised voices for a while. Eventually, Endeavor's face turned red, and he threatened to not recommend Shudo. "Go ahead, I'll still pass the exam using only my ice powers," Shudo challenged. "It is harder to secure a spot without a recommendation. A lot of kids compete to get into UA there," Endeavor warned. "I vow that I will become the #1 hero without ever using your destructive fire abilities," Shudo promised. Aizawa observed Izuku, who he had never seen look more panicked. Well, Aizawa really could not blame him. There was a huge machine about to crash into this girl. "Why you have to do something?" She's gonna get crushed. Izuku insisted. It's a part of the test so I can assure she is safe, Aizawa tried to reassure him. Izuku gave him a doubtful look, which Aizawa didn't fault him for. Just watch, trust me, it won't hurt her. Shinso Hitoshi was swinging around the building with his binding scarf. Was he a little inspired by his favorite hero? Maybe, but who cares? No one really knew who Eraserhead was, and his scarf wasn't exactly the same as the one Eraserhead wore. In fact, this scarf ripped a lot, and he often had to replace it since he couldn't afford to buy the proper materials. He knew he would need a weapon with him for this particular exam if he, at least, wanted a chance. That was when he saw it. The zero-pointer. Hitoshi hated to admit it, but deep down he was terrified. He swallowed as he noticed that it was basically a giant. It didn't help that he was way too close to it for comfort. Why the hell would I have this for the exam? Hitoshi thought. He was about to make a run for it when he heard her. He looked down to see a brown-haired girl trapped under some rubble. She screamed when the zero-pointer was getting closer. Uraraka felt fear flow through her veins when the zero-pointer arrived. Her eyes widened as it punched the ground and smoke attacked her eyes. Her ears hurt as people near her began screaming. She tried to run away, but she suddenly felt herself get knocked down. She struggled to get up for a second before she felt that something heavy had landed on her. Her heart started racing and she struggled to stay still. Her parents worked in the construction business, so she knew how potentially dangerous her situation was. She also was unable to see the tall robot that might step on her and end her life. She couldn't die. She needed to live so she could pass and help her parents. She tried to calm down and use her quirk a few times, but it wouldn't work. She began screaming as she hoped that anyone nearby would hear her and help. Hitoshi originally planned to run for it and gain more points. He doubted the robot would actually hurt her. He was almost positive the girl was going to be fine. Yet, as the last of the smoke cleared, he watched her panic and turn as white as a sheet. He changed his mind. She looked so scared and small. He just wanted to make sure she could escape on her own. He noticed that whenever she tried to use her quirk, it failed every time. Damn it, she can't use her quirk. Hitoshi stared while trying to figure out what to do. Normally, Hitoshi would have left and continued with the exam. It just struck a chord with him. He knew the feeling of wanting help from others while no one would move to stand up for him. He really wanted to just run off, so when his legs betrayed him he decided to go with it. He jumped down and tried to use his scarf to lift the ruble, only it ripped. What wonderful timing! Todoroki Shudo was passing the zero-pointer. He had no plans to focus on the robot. He knew it wasn't going to hurt the girl, the teachers wouldn't allow it. Shit! He heard another voice say from behind him. He turned around to see a purple-haired boy trying to help out the girl. He was using a scarf to lift the ruble, but it ripped. He wanted to continue, but he decided to help. He wasn't sure why he wanted to help at the time. He just felt he should, even if it didn't benefit him. Later, he would think more about it and realize that he wanted to help them because he knew what it was like to have your suffering minimized. And how much it hurt to see those helping you get hurt. He was also touched to see that the purple-haired boy chose to help a stranger he just met, as the testing sections kept people who knew each other separated. He stepped on his right foot to create an ice wall between the zero-pointer and the two other kids. The boy looked over at Todoroki in confusion, but he didn't waste any more time with them. He hastily ran farther away to gain as many points as he could with the little time he had. Uraraka was very thankful for this boy's help. "Look, I can't pick this up without your help. Think you can manage?" he asked while keeping an eye trained on the zero-pointer. I can try," she said. Uraraka took a steadying breath and forced herself to use her quirk to lift the ruble. The boy helped her up, and she shakily stood. Just as she was stable, she puked. The boy wrinkled his nose and flinched while continuing to watch the zero-pointer. The robot suddenly stopped, an alarm went off, and a tiny old lady was coming towards them. "Is everyone all right? How bad were the injuries this time?" the old woman asked. Izuku let out a huge sigh of relief when he saw that Uraraka was saved by a purple-haired boy and another boy helped block the zero-pointer. "See, it's a part of the test," Aizawa said. "Looks like there is a mini Aizawa." Hisashi teased. Aizawa ignored him and inserted boy into the filter. He searched through the files until he found his name, Shinso Hitoshi. Very funny. Alright problem child, you should get back to the dorms. I'll be with you soon, Aizawa said. Izuku left after he said bye to Aizawa, Hizashi, and Kayama. Kayama had jokingly asked for a goodbye hug and Izuku had given her a quick one. Hizashi smiled at the sight. Aizawa pulled up a second file. He knew who he was. Todoroki Shuto Endeavor's son. Those were the two kids who had helped Ochako. Shinso Hitoshi and Todoroki Shuto. Aizawa couldn't wait to interact with these two students. I really think I should have a uniform, Izuku said while tugging at his own sleeve. Then it would look like you are a student here, Aizawa explained, for God knows how many times. But I look so out of place. Izuku stressed. He does have a point. Hizashi agreed. Aizawa shot a not helping glare at his husband. Hizashi responded by winking at him. Aizawa groaned in response to his husband. Geez, thanks for the help. I think your outfit is fine, Aizawa said. Izuku fidgeted with his shirt's hem. He wore a long-sleeve shirt, with simple jeans. A very casual outfit for going out, however, Izuku believed he stood out too much. Izuku wasn't planning to draw any more attention to himself than he already was going to. You will be fine, Aizawa said before pausing and adding, if you are feeling overwhelmed you can go to the teacher's lounge, okay? Izuku stared at Aizawa and simply nodded in response. Izuku frowned and glared at his shoes. Hizashi noticed and cleared his throat. Most people are nervous for their first day of school. Do you want to hear about our first day of school? He offered. Izuku nodded curiously. I got up early for school because it takes a while for me to do my hair. I was so nervous I messed up once and had to restart the whole process. So I barely had any time to eat breakfast. Yamada paused and sent a teasing glance to Aizawa. I remember walking into school and noticing how nervous Shota looked at his desk. He was dashed. No, I wasn't, Aizawa refuted. You definitely were, Yamada insisted while laughing. I was not nervous, you were, Aizawa argued in a calm voice. I was, but not as much as you, Yamada said matter-of-factly. I remember walking into class and seeing you. You were nervously fiddling with your pencil and you kept glancing at the clock on the wall, Yamada recalled. I wasn't nervous about school, idiot. I was worried when someone was almost late to class on our first day. Ah, you were worried about me? Of course, you were so excited about us getting into this school and sharing classes that I expected you to be there early. Aizawa turned back to Izuku and added, I'll be there to make sure no one bothers you, Izuku. You're safe here. You are. Shota can be very scary. Remember how he was last week when I didn't do the dishes? Yamada asked with a shiver. Izuku shivered in agreement. Izuku didn't realize that someone could be so scary without yelling until last week. Listening to their story did make Izuku feel a little better, mostly because it distracted him from his own worries. Being reminded of how scary Aizawa was made him feel more confident about being there, but he really didn't want everyone to stare at his outfit and judge him. Izuku went to visit the big three before heading to Aizawa's class. He wanted some more moral support before heading to class. Murio had received one for all on the day of the entrance exam and he was able to control the quirk well. Murio's training was going well and Izuku was surprised to see that his own training was going better than he thought. He soon found them. Murio had an arm around Tamaki and Murio was pressing his lips gently against his cheek. Nijire trailed behind them while glancing at her phone. Adu! Amajiki! Tagada! Izuku called out. They stopped and turned to him. Midoriya! Tagada said as he turned and gave him a hug. Nijire also gave him a hug and poor Tamaki was left on his own. Are you excited for your first day? Nijire asked as they both let go of him. Tamaki moved to grab Murio's hand, which he gladly held. I'm more terrified than excited. Look at my outfit. Izuku stressed. You look great. Don't worry about it, it will go great. Nijire assured him. Yeah, and I get the feeling you will smile today. Murio said with a knowing grin. You always say that when you see me, Izuku pointed out. He is determined. Tamaki reminded him. We need to get going. So you should get going too, Murio said. Izuku waved them goodbye as he went to the classroom. He entered the classroom and noticed where he was sitting. His desk was right next to the teacher's desk. Who thought this was a good idea? Izuku thought. Izuku knew this was going to end in disaster. Move out of the way. Someone shouted behind him. Izuku jumped back, getting out of the way. There is no need to shout at our classmates. Someone else shouted at them. Izuku stared at the students. He knew some of their names as he had read a few of his classmates' files. The boy that yelled at him was named Bokugu Katsuki. He was familiar to Izuku in a way that his other classmates weren't, but he was not sure why yet. The other boy was the same boy that yelled at him the day of the entrance exam. His name was Ida Tenya. Look, just because you went to a high-class school doesn't mean you get to boss us around. Kaken? Bokugu yelled at Ida. Izuku slowly moved towards his desk. When Bokugu turned his attention back onto Izuku, noticing he was heading to the desk next to the teacher's, not wearing a uniform, and that he hadn't seen him in the entrance exam, Bokugu could tell something was off. What the fuck are you doing here? Izuku flinched at his voice and looked around, hoping he wasn't talking to him. Bokugu scowled and moved closer. Izuku could smell vinegar, ash, and burnt sugar. He squeaked as Bokugu slammed a foot on his desk and set off a small fire in his palm. He slowly let the fire simmer out as he glared at Izuku. Now, answer my question, villain, Bokugu said venomously. What? Izuku was slightly startled, but then his eyes widened as he realized he should have expected a strong reaction to his odd appearance. You heard me. What the fuck are you doing here? Bokugu repeated loudly with a sneer. He can't be a villain. He looks like a student dash, a girl with pink hair, pinkish skin, and tiny horns began. Izuku believed her name was Ishido Mina. No, he is clearly not, Bokugu argued loudly. He's right. He is not wearing the school uniform. Ida stated in a suspicious tone. This was a lot for Izuku to process. He was unable to remember much of his time before waking up in the hospital. Since he woke up in the hospital bed, he was treated kindly and was unsure how to respond to such aggressive behavior. He tugged lightly at the collar of his shirt and hoped that Aizawa would arrive soon. He could tell that Bokugu wouldn't let him leave. Well, are you going to say something or just stand there? Bokugu snapped as he took his foot off the desk and moved to loom directly over Izuku. Izuku backed up instinctively and felt a sharp pain in his back from hitting the chalkboard ledge. Yes, if you are not a student, then why are you here? Ida asked loudly while moving within a foot of Izuku. Before Izuku could say anything, another student interrupted him. Oh boy, this is going to be a long day, Izuku thought bitterly. Hitoshi was walking to his new classroom with light steps. He still couldn't believe it. He had made it into UA and was going to become a hero. He couldn't help but feel like a little kid again. A little kid whose dreams were coming true. His dream was already coming true. He was proud of himself and was genuinely happy he helped that random girl. It turned out he was right to save her. Saving her helped him pass the test. Hey, it's you. Hitoshi turned around to see it was the girl. She was walking towards him. I wanted to thank you for saving me, she said as she bowed to him. Hitoshi stiffened as he stood there, awkwardly processing everything. You're welcome, he responded. My name is Uraraka Ochako. Yours? She asked with a bright smile. Look, I am not here to make friends. He stated. Fine, if that's what you want. Can you tell me your name at least? She asked as her smile dropped. Was it a strange thing to ask? Hitoshi thought so, but it was harmless. They were going to be in the same class, so there was no point in not telling her Shinso Hitoshi. He said, and she nodded as she led the way to class. He knew he was being harsh, but he truly just wanted to focus on his hero career. He wasn't planning on making friends. Spoiler alert, he fails. I noticed you use your scarf during the exam, before it ripped. It looked really cool. Were you able to fix it, or did you have to get a new one? Uraraka asked excitedly after a few seconds of walking in silence. Shinso tugged at his tie while he debated answering. He didn't want to walk to his homeroom in awkward silence, and it was only one conversation. Thank you. I fixed it at home. That's so impressive. The rip looked pretty serious. I'm so excited to meet everyone. What do you think our homeroom teacher will be like? Shoto did not intend to make friends. One, because he didn't know how to do to being isolated, thanks to endeavors plus ultra parenting. 2. He truly did not want friends. He just wanted to focus on being a hero and proving his father wrong. He hadn't used his fire quirk in the entrance exam to spite his father. It worked out well, and he was planning to do the same at the sports festival. That being said, a part of him wasn't opposed to having friends. A part of him really wanted to have friends and be a normal teenager for once. Being away from his father would allow him to finally make friends. He couldn't help but feel a little excited. However, he wasn't sure how he would, or if he was going to, accomplish this. So when he entered the classroom, he was anticipating something different from the scene he walked into. He was expecting to see some of his classmates sitting or talking with one another. However, a couple of his classmates were surrounding a boy. He had wild green hair, green eyes, and freckles all over his face. Now Shoto will admit he did have a hard time understanding social cues. He struggled to notice when people were upset or mad unless he was told directly. That being said, even he knew this boy was having a panic attack or was on the verge of having one. He knew because he had witnessed his siblings have them. He even experienced them. "Fucking talk to us already," one of his new classmates yelled at the boy. "I could bind his legs and arms with my quirk until our teacher arrives." A student with dark hair and a wide grin offered. As he moved to do so, Shoto felt a spike of worry. Someone experiencing a panic attack would only suffer from being restrained. He wasn't sure why his classmates were being so cruel, but he didn't see any malice in the freighted boy's face. His face didn't look anything like Endeavor's when he was yelling at Shoto or his siblings. "Is there something going on?" Shoto asked. He hoped that would distract the grinning classmate from restraining the scared boy. Everyone turned their attention to him. "Yeah, this fucking idiot won't answer us." The classmate that was yelling at the boy had spiky blonde hair and red eyes. "Hey, what's going on?" a confused voice asked. A girl walked in with brown hair. Beside her was a boy with purple hair. Everyone turned their attention to the boy, so Shoto quickly moved. Shoto walked over to him and noticed he was shaking hard. "Hey, I am going to touch you. Is that okay?" Shoto whispered to the greenette. The boy shakily nodded his head. So Shoto slowly placed his right hand on his shoulder. The boy reacted by tensing up and his shaking grew more pronounced. So he doesn't like the cold. Shoto made this mental note as he switched hands. The boy relaxed little by little. "Come on, you guys won't get him to talk if you're surrounding him like that." The girl argued with the blonde. "I'll do whatever the hell I want until I get answers," he shouted. Shoto didn't see a reason to focus on their bickering, so he refocused his attention on the boy. "Do you want to go somewhere safe?" Todoroki asked him gently. Before the other boy could get an answer out, there was a sudden loud thud. Everyone looked at the door. A hobo-looking man in a yellow sleeping bag fell onto the floor. As he lay there, he stared at the scene he was witnessing. "You brats haven't been here for more than an hour and you are already causing trouble." Ochako really wanted to be friends with Shinso. She felt conflicted about taking up Shinso's time, but she really couldn't bring herself to feel too bad. After all, him saving her helped him get into the hero course and he was willingly having a conversation with her. So she smiled brightly while she hoped she could become friends with him as they become more comfortable with one another. Once they got to their new classroom, the scene waiting for them greatly confused them. Two boys were surrounding the boy with green curly hair she had seen during the entrance exam. Then a few other classmates were glaring at the boy farther away and one other boy was staring at him in concern. She recognized the concerned boy. He had helped save her from the giant robot. She stared at his half-white and half-red hair for a second while she tried to recall his name. She blinks as she remembers that it's Todoroki Shoto. She returned her gaze to the green-haired boy, who was shaking and clearly in a state of panic. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked. Her voice drew everyone's attention towards her. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Todoroki move closer to the frightened boy. "We're trying to figure out why he is here." A tall, blue-haired boy with glasses replied coldly. "Yes, surrounding, yelling at, and cornering him is a great way of convincing him to tell us anything," Shinso remarked sarcastically. "Well, maybe if he would just fucking say something we wouldn't dash," a loud, spiky blonde began angrily before Ochako interrupted him. "Well, of course, he doesn't want to say anything. He looks terrified." Ochako pointed out calmly. She released a long sigh at her classmates' stunned looks. Come on, look at him. We are supposed to be heroes. We should notice when someone is panicking or in distress. Ochako scolded. Some of the students began to notice the poor boy's distress. Their glares softened, and they slowly backed away. However, the spiky blonde just didn't know when to give up. So he returned his attention to the boy. Shinso looked ready to punch this blonde asshole. Surprisingly, Ochako also looks ready to punch the blonde, even though she was smaller than him. Well, I still need some fucking answers, he yelled, turning back to the boy. This time Todoroki glared at the spiky blonde. He gave an "if you try anything I swear" glare, which freaked Shinso and Ochako out a little. The blonde looked unfazed and started walking towards the pair. Todoroki froze his shoes to the ground. The blonde snarled and caused explosions near his shoes to unfreeze them. After he could move again, he began creating more explosions while walking menacingly towards them. Ochako frowned and floated a nearby desk in front of him. Todoroki thought about creating a wall of ice to block him but decided not to since the scared boy reacted badly to the cold. I'll do whatever the hell I want until I get answers, the blonde shouted. Come on, you won't get him to talk if you're surrounding him like that, Ochako argued with the blonde. Hey, angry Pomeranian, Shinso called casually. What did you say? You dash, Shinso smirked as he used his quirk to influence the blonde. As Shinso commanded the blonde to sit down, some of the students shot him nervous looks while they backed away towards their desks. He signs at their overreaction and nervously glances at Ochako. Great thinking, Shinso. I wondered what your quirk was. That's so cool. Shinso rubs the back of his neck and looks away in embarrassment. Then they heard a loud thud. They stared at the sudden appearance of a hobo-looking man in a yellow sleeping bag. Fucking say something already. We just want some answers. Why are you wearing those cuffs? Is the staff aware of you? What the fuck is up with you? Can you fucking say something already? Izuku didn't know what had triggered it. Maybe being surrounded did it, or being yelled at. Izuku just knew he was terrified. He was too overwhelmed and he just wanted to leave. Yet all he could do was shake. He felt cold and couldn't stop trembling, but he also felt really sweaty. His vision was starting to blur and his stomach hurt badly. How could he get out of here? Hey, I am going to touch you. Is that okay? Izuku tried to figure out who said that, but he wasn't sure. Maybe he can help. He hesitantly nodded. He suddenly felt extremely cold. He felt a few tears drop from his eyes. No, nope, no, not again. Please not again. Before Izuku's anxiety could get any worse, the temperature changed. The cold was replaced with warmth. He felt his body relax slowly as he took deep breaths. He was becoming aware of his surroundings. Granted, it was taking too long for Izuku's liking. He blinked a few times as the blurriness in his eyes began to clear. As his shaking slowed, his gaze settled on the boy who was helping him. He stared at the boy. He remembered watching his entrance exam. His eyes, well, more so his right eye, looked so familiar. Izuku was wondering why he looked so familiar. However, his thoughts were cut off by yelling. Do you want to go somewhere safe? The boy asked softly. Before Izuku could answer, he heard a loud thud. Then he saw Aizawa in his sleeping bag. You brats haven't been here for more than an hour and you are already causing trouble, he said. Izuku had never felt more relieved to see Aizawa than at that moment. Aizawa knew Izuku attending school would be difficult for him. He had never gone to school, he barely interacted with kids his age, and his unique situation would instantly make him stand out. However, Aizawa was trying to be more positive for Izuku's sake. So when he walked towards the classroom with his sleeping bag and konyaku jelly drink, he was greatly disappointed. His new students were already arguing about Izuku and how to handle him. He understood their line of thinking. However, for future heroes, you'd think they would be more reasonable. He was slightly pleased to see there were at least 2 students trying to urge the rest of the class to be reasonable. Aizawa put the sleeping bag on and allowed himself to fall and create a loud thud. All his students quickly turned to face the noise. You brats haven't been here for more than an hour and you are already causing trouble. He scolded them. Their reactions were mixed. Some jumped up, others appeared terrified, and some stood there in bewilderment. Izuku was the only one that wasn't severely affected by Aizawa. It wasn't like he hadn't seen Aizawa do this before. Oh, he did this a lot. In fact, Izuku found it amusing. "Are you alright, problem child?" he asked. "I'm fine. Just overwhelmed." Izuku replied. "Need to leave?" Aizawa asked with a hint of worry. "No, I'm good. I'm sorry for causing a scene." Izuku bowed in Aizawa's direction. "Alright everyone, sit down. We have a lot to discuss," Aizawa said as he got up from the sleeping bag. He tossed his empty jelly drink container out while all his new students moved to their seats. Izuku was sitting at his desk and scratching the back of his neck. Aizawa sighed and knew this was going to be a long first day. "So I know you kids want to know about him. After all, I could hear all of you yelling from down the hallway," Aizawa stated with a deep frown. There was an awkward silence before Aizawa continued. "His name is Midoriya Izuku. He was rescued a few months ago and now is under UA's protection. He is under my supervision, which is why he is here," Aizawa explained. "How come we haven't heard of the rescue?" yelled a spiky blonde. "We are keeping him out of the media for his safety." Which leads me to my next point. "We are keeping him out of the media for his safety," Aizawa emphasized slowly while glaring at his students. "Some of you kids are going to be heroes and need to understand that we have to keep certain things private. For Midoriya's safety, we need the media to know nothing about him. If I find out one of you students leaked any information about him, I will not only expel you, I will make it my personal mission to make sure you never become a hero. Is that clear?" Aizawa asked while staring directly at the angry blonde. To say the classroom was terrified of Aizawa was putting it lightly. Even though Aizawa spoke calmly, his threat was made clear to everyone. So everyone decided to nod. Most of them quietly hoped that they'd find out more about the boy who their teacher protected so scarily. A few of them considered trying to talk to him in the morning before their teacher showed up. But the frustrated blonde wasn't satisfied with Aizawa's answer. While he was impulsive, he wasn't stupid. Only special and dangerous circumstances would call for a teenager to be under UA's protection for months. The fact that their teacher was supervising him and seemed protective of him was even more strange. The teen himself didn't seem very dangerous. His breakdown over a few questions made that glaringly obvious. But if he wasn't strong and useful, why would UA be protecting him? The police usually dealt with the victims heroes saved. The green-haired boy must be more powerful than he let on. He most likely was acting earlier to deceive all of them, which means he was looking down on them. On him. The blonde turned to glare at the teen when he noticed him shake slightly. He really dared to laugh at him. When the fiery boy failed to nod or respond, Aizawa strode towards his desk and towered over him. The blonde stared up at him for 2 long minutes. Aizawa's frown only grew as the seconds ticked forward, until the blonde turned to glare at Izuku and then nodded curtly towards Aizawa. While the blonde was trying to figure him out and Aizawa was trying to glare him to death, Izuku was mentally dying of embarrassment. After this scene, he was sure he would never have made any friends. His earlier worries about his outfit made him laugh for a second. He was definitely not prepared for his first day of school. "Now that we have established that, get changed," Aizawa announced while walking to the door. Izuku collected his notebook and pens excitedly, but Aizawa's students stared at him in confusion. "We are going outside. I want to see how you all use your quirks. Now get changed," Aizawa explained. "Don't we have an orientation?" someone questioned. "We are going to be doing this instead. Now get changed, problem child, come on," Aizawa said. No one else protested as they moved to get changed quickly. Most of the students were still too frightened to attempt to. As Aizawa waited for his students, he asked quietly, "Do you still feel up to this? You can go to the dorms if you're still overwhelmed." "I'm fine, Aizawa." "Really am?" Izuku said unconvincingly. "Don't be too hard on yourself. This is all still new for you," he said. I know, don't worry about me," Izuku insisted. Before Aizawa could protest, students started arriving in groups. Only the angry blonde was brave enough to stalk over there by himself. "We'll talk later," Aizawa promised him with a head pat. Izuku had to fight the urge to hide while they waited. The whole time everyone stared at him, though some were more obvious about it than others. Eventually, the last student arrived, and he recognized him as the boy who helped him. After a few seconds of arguing with himself, he waved at the kind boy and deflated slightly when he looked away. Soon enough, Aizawa started class. Now that everyone is here, let's begin our lesson. Izuku flipped to a clean page in his notebook as Aizawa began class. All of you will use your quirks during this competition. I will be testing your speed, strength, and tactics. The person that has the lowest score will be expelled, he explained seriously. Immediately, the students began to protest. That's not fair at all. One of the students insisted. Are natural disasters fair? Are illnesses fair? Life isn't fair, and you will have to deal with it, Aizawa said in a clipped tone. Everyone stopped protesting after hearing the frost in his voice. A boy slowly raised his hand. It was Mini Aizawa, in the words of Yamada. Yes? Aizawa asked. The boy nervously adjusted his scarf before speaking. Can I use my scarf? I used it in the entrance exam, he explained. Aizawa thought it over before replying. I don't see why not, since you already have it. The boy looked relieved. Aizawa and Yamada had explained to Izuku that his scarf was support gear. Great now, Bakugo. You scored the highest on both exams. Throw this ball without your quirk and then with your quirk, Aizawa said. Aizawa threw a baseball at him and he easily caught it. 67 meters, now throw it with your quirk, Aizawa said monotonously. Bakugo smiled as he threw the ball and yelled, Die. Wow, Kaken is really powerful. Wait, who is Kaken? Izuku thought to himself in confusion. Izuku repeated the name to himself a few times and felt a lot of complicated emotions. After a few minutes of thinking over the name, he felt a pulsing ache in his head. He briefly wondered if the name was erased when his memory was wiped. Then his headache grew worse and his eyes teared up. Izuku frowned and started a separate page on Kaken where he wrote only a few sentences. Then he started taking notes on the other students. Though he did briefly return to the separate page to note his fleeting headache. Izuku diligently wrote down the times his classmates got on the 50-meter dash. While most of his classmates received average numbers, Bakugo's time was 5.58s. As Izuku made a note about his exceptional speed, his mind started to drift towards the second page he made for Bakugo. Then he felt more pain in his head. He was unsure if it was actually linked to the memory wiping he underwent or if he was just imagining things. Izuku continued watching the class from his spot. He wanted to continue thinking about who the hell this Kaken was, but he decided that it would be better to think about it later. So he focused on adding a lot of details and theories to his notes. Problem child. We are going to wrap this up soon, so head to your dorm, Aizawa called. Izuku jumped when he heard Aizawa's voice because he had been intensely staring at his notes while muttering to himself for the past few minutes. Shouldn't you be coming with me? Izuku pointed out. Not today for now, President Mike and Tagata will be watching you, Aizawa informed him. Izuku nodded and started walking toward his dorm. Aizawa watched Izuku head back to his dorm. He was going to scold his students properly now. He wanted to make sure Izuku wasn't here, since he was already embarrassed. Before you brats get your scores, I want to make something very clear, Aizawa began. While his demeanor was calm, his tone was the opposite. To put it simply, the way most of you treated Midoriya was completely unacceptable. Being teenagers is not an excuse. As future heroes, you should have known better. If you ever hope to become a hero in my class, you will treat others with decency and respect. I have expelled 154 students in my career and I won't hesitate to add to the number. Is that understood? His class nodded quickly, and Ida raised his hand. May I speak to him after class? I would like to apologize for my behavior. Uraraka also raised her hand. Can I also see him? I would like to speak with him. Soon half the class wanted to see Midoriya. Look, if you kids want to see Midoriya, come during or after school. Now let's get back to our competition, Aizawa said. The class quickly began their grip strength test. Shoji went first and had a grip strength of 46. It was so embarrassing. Izuku cried as he curled up into a ball on the couch. Cloud and Ace were trying to play with him, but he was neglecting them. I'm really sorry that happened to you, Midoriya, Murio said consolingly. We all have a rough first. Remember when we first met Murio? Tamaki asked with a blush. Murio smiled fondly in response. Yes, I do. Tamaki was new to our class, and I became his friend that day. Murio said as he held his hand and rubbed small circles into it. It was still embarrassing. I thought I would be able to handle it, but I couldn't. I just stood there and cried like a baby. Izuku insisted while gently brushing away a paw on his leg. Hey, just because you cried doesn't mean you won't make friends. You were overwhelmed and panicked. If no one in that class is understanding of that, then they aren't worth being friends with. Murio explained. Why yeah, you shouldn't let this one bad day define your relationship with this class, Tamaki said wisely. Izuku stared at him unblinkingly, which freaked him out. So he went to hide in a corner. Murio chuckled as walked towards the corner. He gently grabbed and held Tamaki's hand. Just remember, if they judge you for panicking, they aren't worth being your friends. Murio said. Tamaki agreed with a small nod. Izuku sighed and decided he would stop neglecting Ace and Cloud. As he was playing with the cats, Murio managed to convince Tamaki to go to the kitchen and make something. Eventually, Aizawa finally entered the dorm. Where's Hisashi? In the bathroom. Dinner is on the stove, Izuku answered while briefly looking up. Aizawa thanked him and left for the kitchen. Izuku was playing with the cats when he heard knocking coming from the door. Someone's at the door. I'll answer it, Izuku shouted. He picked up Ace and answered the door. It was Class 1A. He stared at 1A until Uraraka began to talk. Hi. I am Uraraka Ochako. It's nice to meet you, she said as she held her hand out to Izuku. He instinctively flinched away, which startled Ace. He apologized with a few careful pets that calmed Ace down. Sorry. She apologized, pulling her hand away. It's okay. So why are you all here? Izuku asked curiously. Ida Tenya came forward and bowed. I want to apologize for my behavior. I should have recognized your distress, he confessed guiltily. Once he finished, other students chimed in agreement. You're apologizing to me? Izuku asked with uncertainty. Izuku was so absorbed in his conversation that he failed to notice Hisashi, Murio, and Tamaki enter the room. Yeah, we fucked up. Just accept the damn apology, Kaken said as he gave him an assessing look. We got off on the wrong foot. So let's start over, Uraraka said encouragingly. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized that some of them wanted to be friends with him. Friends? Izuku felt his heart light up at the thought. Ace purred in agreement. The cat is cute, Shinso added. Thanks. It's Aizawa's cat? Yeah, I think I would like to be friends, Izuku said as he smiled. As he did so, there was a loud gasp. Izuku immediately turned his head to see Hisashi and Murio gasping. Even Tamaki looked surprised. You smiled? Both of the blondes shouted in unison. Did you get a photo? Hisashi asked eagerly. Yes. I have some. Murio excitedly shook his phone. And then turned his brightness all the way up. He showed the photos to Hisashi. All the photos only caught the left side of Izuku's smile. They were good, and Murio enthusiastically sent a few to Nijire. Shoyuda? Izuku smiled for the first time. Come look. Yamada yelled animatedly. Izuku smiled again and turned his attention back to 1A. Oh, how rude of me. Do you want to come in for dinner? Izuku asked while looking down. Sorry, I really can't, but next time I can. Can I give you my number? Uraraka asked. I don't have a phone, Izuku admitted with a small frown. No worries, I'll still write it down. Me too. Same here. Izuku couldn't help but smile again. He had friends, real friends. He liked this, having friends and smiling. He didn't even realize how much he missed smiling before this. I got paper. Someone shouted and everyone began to write their numbers down. Izuku liked this a lot. Smiling felt great. While Izuku was happily talking to his classmates, Murio showed the photos to Aizawa. Aizawa half smiled at the pictures and asked Murio to send them to him. After Aizawa gave Murio his number, he sent him the 3 best pictures. Murio noticed that Izuku was still smiling, so he started heading to another room to use his quirk to get a few more pictures. He felt a hand stop him and he turned to stare at Tamaki with a question clear in his eyes. This is the first time Izuku has smiled in a long time. We should let him enjoy the moment in peace. Before Murio could reply, one of Izuku's classmates asked, "Who are they?" Izuku turned his smiling face towards Murio and Tamaki in response to the question. Murio took a quick picture of Izuku's full smile before he replied. Murio cheerily said, "We're just his friends." Tamaki nervously flashed Izuku a smile before hurrying to a different room. When Murio went to check on Tamaki, he noticed that Tamaki had his head against a wall. Murio sighed fondly and walked over to Tamaki. "I'm so proud of Izuku for making more friends and smiling again after all he went through." "Me too." He had an adorable smile. Tamaki agreed with a soft smile. The ringing of Murio's phone startled them both for a second. "Who is it?" "Nijire," Murio answered while accepting the call. "I can't believe it." Izuku finally smiled. "Tell me everything that happened. Also, do you have any other photos?" Izuku loved his new friends. It was so exciting to have them. It was also completely nerve-wracking. He found himself anxiously asking Murio and Yamada for advice. Well, more so interrogating them than asking them. He wanted to become the perfect friend. However, he quickly learned that was impossible. According to his notes, he just needed to be himself. That was it. Why was something so simple yet so complicated? Izuku watched Class 1A freak out over picking their class representative on the second day. He gladly helped out when the class asked him his opinion. He had categorized all of their quirks and skills. Many thought it was creepy, however, others thought it was impressive. Then there's Yaoyorozu's quirk, which is extremely useful, and Izuku stopped himself as his rambling was cut off. "Problem child, let the class pick their class representative themselves." Sorry Aizawa." Izuku apologized as he quickly sat back down. Yaoyorozu had the most votes for class representative and Ida became the deputy representative. After class, Izuku managed to talk with his friends before leaving. "Congratulations, Yaoyorozu. Thank you, Midoriya, for explaining why my skills would help me be the best student representative. It's impressive how much you noticed the other day." "Yeah, Midoriya. Your analysis was amazing. Do you enjoy observing quirks, or do you just naturally notice a lot of things?" Uraraka asked curiously. "While both are true, I really love analyzing quirks, and I even started thinking about combat strategies that some of you could use while fighting," Izuku replied. He was about to suggest a few moves to Uraraka when Aizawa cleared his throat. Izuku smiled and said goodbye to both of them before he moved to follow Aizawa. He caught up with Aizawa before he voiced his thoughts out loud. "Aizawa, why would you do that?" He scolded him. "What?" Aizawa asked innocently. "It's only the second day, and you made them pick their class representative?" Izuku asked in exasperation. Aizawa continued to deny everything. So Izuku continued to pester him about it. 1A was on their way to visit Midoriya. At first, it was only going to be Uraraka and Hitoshi visiting, but when the alarms went off, everyone wanted to check up on Midoriya. They were worried that the alarms might have caused him to have another panic attack. "I hope Midoriya is all right," Uraraka murmured. "He was with Aizawa, so I am sure he is okay," Hitoshi reminded her. 1A had an unspoken agreement when it came to Midoriya. Well, more so, 2 rules that were not to be broken. Rule 1, show Midoriya everything. Even though they just started hanging out, it was clear to everyone that Midoriya was a bit out of touch. He didn't know how to work a cell phone, wasn't aware of popular movies, and just seemed like he lived under a rock. Mina and Siro were making it their personal mission to show him how to work a phone. They already began to show him yesterday, though it was a slow process. Yesterday, Mina suggested watching videos on her phone. So Midoriya asked if that was like watching movies on television. When she nodded, he exclaimed in excitement, "Wow, phones can really do a lot. Not only can you talk to people with phones, immediately translate other languages, and play music, you can also watch videos." Mina and Siro both stared at him until he shrunk in on himself. Then they both moved to sit on either side of him. Mina put her arm around him and said, "I'll show you my phone and what you can do on one, okay?" "Me too." I have some fun games, Shiro offered. Shiro and Mina spent the rest of their time there showing Izuku how to screenshot, how to use Google and YouTube. She clicked on the first video and it was Edward Cullen being a dumbass for 12 minutes straight. After a couple of minutes of staring in confusion, Izuku asked who that was. Mina asked if he'd ever heard of Twilight and he shook his head. Oh, we are watching all of the movies. Shiro protested for a few minutes before he unlocked his own phone and began to show Midoriya some of his favorite games. Mina and Shiro argued over Genshin Impact for 20 minutes before they both had to leave because it was getting really dark. Rule 2, no one could ask or talk about Midoriya's past. It was clear to everyone that Midoriya's past was twisted. After all, he had to stay at UA for his safety. Because of how they treated him on the first day, they really wanted to make up for their mistake. So they went to see Midoriya when the alarms went off. It was a false alarm thanks to the press this morning. Hey, is Midoriya okay? Uraraka asked the minute present Mike opened the door. He is fine. He panicked a little but Aizawa handled it. I'll get some snacks for you little listeners, he shouted. 1A followed him to the kitchen and noticed that Midoriya was in the kitchen helping present Mike cook. He was placing some vegetables onto a blue cutting board. Hey Midoriya, Uraraka called as she ran over to the kitchen. Hey guys. What are all of you doing here? Izuku questioned as he stopped cutting up vegetables. We wanted to check up on you, Momo explained. Ah, thanks Yaoyorozu. You guys didn't need to come? Izuku said. Please call me Momo. We all chose to come, Momo added. Momo, got it? Izuku mumbled. Are you okay, Midoriya? Kirishima asked. Oh, I'm fine. I didn't go into a state of panic. I was just terrified, Izuku explained, while rubbing the back of his neck. Well, that's good to hear. Uraraka cheered. Anyways, let me get you guys something to eat. Izuku smiled. As the time passed, Izuku found himself zoning out. He still hasn't figured out who Kaken was. Also Midoriya, we should dash. Deku, Izuku blurted out suddenly. Huh. Call me Deku Uraraka, Izuku insisted. What? No, why would I dash? An old friend used to call me that. It was a nice joke, I think. Since you guys are my friends, I think it's only fair you call me that. Izuku clarified. Oh, who was this old friend? Uraraka wondered. I knew him when we were really little and it has been many years. However, I remember I used to call him Kaken. A lot of Izuku's classmates left after checking up on him. Only Sato, Azui, Jair, Tokoyami, Shiro, Shinso, and Uraraka remained. Though Yaoyorozu and Hagakure promised to return later, Mina left to get the first 2 Twilight movies. While they waited for Mina's return, Shinso, Uraraka, and Izuku played with the cats. Uraraka and Deku started talking about her quirk and how useful it was, which eventually led to Izuku asking why she decided to become a hero. I want to become a hero so I can make money for my parents. So they can live an easy life, Uraraka answered with a smile. That's a very good reason, Uraraka-san, Deku said while Shinso hummed in agreement. What about you, Shinso-kun? Uraraka asked curiously. I want to become a pro-hero to prove them wrong. Prove them wrong? Uraraka repeated in confusion. My quirk is brainwashing. It's a villainous quirk. That's what everyone always said, Shinso answered with frustration before getting up to leave. Where are you going, Shinso-kun? Uraraka asked. I'm going home. I just remembered that I need to make dinner tonight, Shinso mumbled before quickly leaving. Izuku and Uraraka watched him go with a frown. I'm back. We're watching both of the Twilight movies, Mina announced as everyone moved to the room with the television. Deku asked a lot of questions during the movie. Out of confusion. He had no idea what a vampire was or why it would be sparkly. I want something sweet, Uraraka randomly shared. Now that you mention it, me too, Mina agreed. Do you have anything, Deku? Uraraka asked hopefully. No, sorry, Midoriya replied. If Midoriya will let me, I could bake a cake? Sato offered hesitatingly. Of course you can. Would you mind if I helped? Deku asked. Sure, you do know this kitchen better than us, Sato replied. I want to help too, Azui volunteered. The more, the merrier, Sato replied before heading to the kitchen. Deku and Azui followed him in excitement. They decided to make a basic vanilla cake. So Deku pulled out the baking equipment while Azui grabbed the butter, eggs, and milk. Sato found the sugar, baking powder, and flour before delegating tasks to everyone. Deku grabbed the salt and the vanilla before he began to cream the butter and sugar together. After they finished, Deku cleaned the flour off of him and then returned to the room where everyone was waiting for the cake. Jairu and Tokoyami were discussing music when Deku walked in. They mentioned Mother Mother and Mitsuki animatedly. You both seem excited. What are you talking about? Deku wondered. Our favorite artists. Have you heard of Mother Mother, Mitsuki, or Sir Chloe? Who? They make really good music. The cake should have at least 20 more minutes left. We can listen to their songs while we wait if you want. Izuku offered in excitement. He enjoyed listening to music with the big three and wanted to hear more amazing songs. Thank you for the cake, everyone said as they began to eat the vanilla cake. Whoa, this is really delicious. Uraraka exclaimed. Yeah, the frosting is delicious and the cake is very moist, Mina agreed. Sato was very good at giving instructions, Azui said, and Deku agreed with a nod. As Izuku took his plate to the kitchen to watch, he heard a knock. Yaoyorozu and Hagakure, you're back. We just finished baking a cake a few minutes ago, and I saved you both slices. It's vanilla, Izuku informed them as he grabbed 2 plates. Thank you, Midoriya, but please wait. I have some things for you. For me? Izuku questioned as he set the plates down on the counter. Yes, we went shopping to get you a few clothes, Yaoyorozu explained. Oh, you didn't have to, Izuku assured her. I wanted to. I wanted to thank you as the student representative for today, and I also wanted to apologize for your first day. I wasn't sure what I should do to thank you until Hagakure suggested I get you a few things, so she offered to come with me to help. Thank you, Yaoyorozu and Hagakure, Izuku said as he enthusiastically took the bags and glanced inside. We noticed that you prefer casual and warm clothes, so we bought you a few different hoodies. Then we passed a store that sold really cool All Might hoodies and we decided to buy you a few. Hagakure happily informed him. Thank you, All Might is one of my favorite heroes, Izuku told them after he looked at all the clothes. Then he set the bags neatly on a chair and served them some of the cake. Good morning, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu greeted him as she entered. Good morning, Yaoyorozu, Midoriya happily returned. I see you're wearing one of the green hoodies we got for you. Are all the clothes comfortable? They really are, thank you, Izuku answered with a bright smile. They talked for a few more minutes before Aizawa started class. While they were talking, 2 blondes were listening to them. Bakugo glared at them as he wondered why she was being so friendly to their strange classmate. Meanwhile, Aoyama smiled and was inspired to give his own gift to Midoriya. Midoriya was reading on the couch when he heard light knocking. He opened the door and was surprised to see Aoyama standing there. Bonjour, I come bearing gifts, Aoyama announced as he strutted into the room. I brought you my favorite cheese and some more clothes, Aoyama explained while putting the cheese into the fridge. Clothes? Deku repeated. We're only an inch apart, so I brought you some of the clothes I own that I never got around to wearing. Icha? Deku asked. I know what it's like to be so scared you can't speak. I used to feel like that before I started wearing more dazzling clothes, Aoyama explained. When Deku failed to say anything, Aoyama looked down and added, I'm sorry, I didn't speak up on the first day. I saw your face, but I was too frightened to say anything. Deku assured him that he didn't hold it against him and that he was very thankful. Aoyama smiled at that and insisted he try on the clothes he bought. What? Deku asked. If you wear clothes as fabulous as this, you are legally required to put on a D-file mode. A fashion show. I'll start my favorite fashion show playlist while you get changed, Aoyama cheerily said. Deku blushed at the thought of putting on a fashion show, but no one else would see him and he was grateful that Aoyama wanted to personally apologize to him. Plus, he wanted to get to know Aoyama more, so he changed and came out covering his face in embarrassment. Are you ready, Tamura? All for One inquired. Yes, Master, I am, Tamura replied through the screen. Good, the Nomu is ready. Now prepare to gather as many villains as you can. You will soon be able to kill All Might once and for all. Are you coming on the field trip with us? Deku? Uraraka asked once she finished class and was able to visit him. What is a field trip? Deku asked in confusion. Field trips are trips students go on to study things firsthand. Aizawa-sensei was talking about it in class earlier. It's an off-campus training ground, but it's still considered a part of UA. Oh, I wasn't listening because I was thinking about. Deku stopped himself abruptly. When he was making his way to his seat, he overheard Ishido talking to Shiro. They'd been discussing Ishido's mom and the gift she planned to get her for her birthday. Izuku felt sad after hearing about Ishido's mom. He barely remembered his mom and had no idea when her birthday was. He knew logically that she had died, but he had no idea when. How many birthdays did she celebrate alone before she died? Did she have anyone else to celebrate with her? Has her birthday passed since he was freed from the ice? Was it yesterday or today? Uraraka recognized the look in his eyes and tried to distract him. So, will you join us on the field trip? It would be a great chance to observe our quirks, Uraraka asked him with a smile. I'm not actually a student here. Do you really think he'd let me go? Of course. He and All Might will be there. All Might is the #1 hero and Aizawa-sensei is a teacher at UA, so he must be very skilled at fighting. Izuku agreed, and they talked for a while before Uraraka left. Izuku thought about the best way to ask Aizawa to let him go and then waited for Yagi and Aizawa to return from a meeting. As soon as they returned, Izuku jumped up in excitement and hurried to the door. Hello, young Midoriya, Yagi greeted him. Do you need something, problem child? Well, I wanted to ask if I could join your class on their field trip to Dash. No, you won't be joining us. You'll stay here. But you didn't even let me finish my sentence, Izuku pointed out. It doesn't matter. I've already decided that you'll stay here. You're not supposed to leave UA, Aizawa said firmly before quickly walking away. I'm sorry, young Midoriya. I wish you could come with us, but it's not my decision to make. Aizawa is the one who's in charge of your safety for a reason. I understand that you want me to be safe, but wouldn't I be safer with 3 pro heroes than I would be if you left me alone? Izuku asked while following Aizawa into the kitchen. All 3 of us will be busy focusing on the students. Even if one of us wasn't focusing on them, All Might isn't the best at watching people and is easily distracted. If 13 was watching you and you suddenly were attacked by a villain, then you'd be captured because she specializes in search and rescue. Her powers aren't suited for defensive combat, as she'd kill the villain if she used her powers on them. I wouldn't wander from the training facility, so if a villain chose to attack me, you and Yagi would notice, Izuku pointed out. When Aizawa continued to spray the contents and did not answer, Izuku wondered if he wore him down. Even if a villain managed to miraculously slip in without you, Yagi, or the other students noticing, we've been training some of my quirks. I think I could protect myself long enough for someone to notice the villain. The answer is still no, Izuku, Aizawa replied tiredly. I could stand close enough that you'll notice if I start fighting a villain, Izuku offered, undeterred. We've had this conversation multiple times since yesterday. No, Izuku, you are not allowed to come on the trip with us, Aizawa asserted while wiping the fridge. Izuku sighed loudly before loudly stomping to the couch. He huffed loudly and then began to glower at the wall. He spent a lot of time yesterday thinking of different arguments to convince Aizawa to allow him to come on the field trip. He mentioned them to Aizawa multiple times and still wasn't able to convince him. He just wanted to go on the trip and observe his classmates so he could ignore the fact that his mom was dead and he barely remembered her. Ace played with Izuku's pant leg for a while before he curled up in a ball and fell asleep. Hisashi returned and noticed immediately that Izuku was glaring at the wall. When he was about to call for Aizawa, he noticed that he was cleaning angrily. He made more noises than normal and Hisashi gulped before walking into the kitchen. I'm home. What's wrong? Izuku was upset about something, but we talked it over and I'm sure that he will be over it soon, Aizawa responded calmly. Are you sure? You smell like bleach and artificial lemons, Hisashi informed him with a wrinkled nose. Aizawa finished cleaning the floor and smelled himself before also wrinkling his nose. I didn't realize that the smell was me. You usually don't when you get really into cleaning. You should go shower before you end up with another headache, Hisashi advised. You're right. Thanks, Aizawa said while putting away cleaning sprays and sponges. Hisashi follows him out of the kitchen to go put his stuff away before he checks on Izuku. Before he could announce his presence, Izuku was speaking to Ace. Lately, I've tried to remember more of my mom, but I just can't. I know that even if I still had my memories, I'd be upset that she died. But I think the fact that I barely remember her makes it hurt worse. I have no idea when her birthday was or when she died. I can't remember if she was shorter or taller than me. I just wish I could remember her, Izuku confessed to Ace in a broken whisper. Izuku was petting him with one hand and wiping his tears with the other. Hisashi stood conflicted at the doorway. He wanted to comfort Izuku, but he wasn't sure if he would appreciate it. So Hisashi quietly walked back to the room he came from before walking loudly towards Izuku. That way, Izuku could decide whether he confided in him. When Hisashi reached him again, Izuku was smiling down at Ace. If Hisashi hadn't accidentally overheard Izuku, he would have thought he was actually happy. Hisashi ruffled his hair before sitting down next to him and asking how his day was. For the last time, I said no, Aizawa sighed. Come on. I am supposed to be with you 24/7. Izuku argued angrily. Izuku opened his mouth to continue protesting but was silenced with a hand. It is not safe for you to come with us and you need to stay at UA, Aizawa retorted while clearing the table for the groceries that would soon arrive. Yagi, 13 and you will be there. I think I'll be fine. Plus, I will just be standing off to the side, Izuku pointed out. Aizawa rubbed his pounding head, not wanting to continue this debate. Hey, I just got back from the supermarket and What's happening? Hisashi asked after noticing that his husband and adopted son looked very annoyed with one another. It's Aizawa, he won't dash. Problem child wants to. Hisashi stared in confusion as the two began to talk over each other. Yamada here Aro, are they still fighting? Yagi asked while bringing the groceries inside. What are they fighting about? Hisashi asked, hating to be left in the dark. Aizawa, you didn't tell him? Yagi questioned. His tone tinged with surprise. There is nothing to tell because I said no, Aizawa said sternly before he began to put the groceries away loudly. Come on. What's the worst that can happen? Izuku protested. Yagi sighed, tired of the bickering. Young Midoriya wants to join Class 1A on our trip to USJ. Aizawa wants him to stay here. Yagi explained. Oh, I see. Hisashi said, now conflicted. He understood both sides. Aizawa just wanted Izuku to be safe and Izuku just wanted to get out of UA. It's not that he hated UA, it's just that he had been stuck in UA for months. Now that he had friends, he wanted to hang out with them outside of the classroom. Alright, the trip isn't until next week. So let's talk about it like civil people, Hisashi said and motioned for them both to sit down. Both Izuku and Aizawa sat down but remained tense. Should I start cooking? Yagi asked, clearly eager to avoid their repetitive argument. No, I would actually like your input, Hisashi said with an apologetic smile. Hisashi had to admit that it was strange that he and his husband were friends with the #1 pro hero. However, it was bound to happen with how often Yagi came to visit Izuku. They spent a lot of time watching Izuku and caring for him. The friendship just happened, and no one was really bothered by it. Well, maybe Aizawa, but he tolerated the pro hero. Well, let's hear both sides before coming to an agreement, Yagi offered. Hisashi nodded and moved to sit next to his stressed-out husband. Yagi stood beside Izuku. Who will go first? I will, Aizawa and Izuku said at the same time. How long have they been fighting over this? Hisashi asked. About 2 days straight, Yagi said with a deep frown. Oh great, Shoyuta you go first, Hisashi said. It's not safe. It's meant to be a training ground. You need to stay within UA and I can't keep my eyes on you the whole trip. Aizawa explained evenly. Alright, fair points. Young Midoriya, what are your views? Yagi questioned. I understand that it is a training ground. However, I won't be training. I would simply watch. USJ is a part of UA. Yagi can watch me when you're not watching me, and I just want to go out. I haven't been able to since I woke up from the ice. Izuku argued while trying to keep his voice calm. Kid, I know you want to go out, but we haven't had the time. Plus your quirk dash. I have these quirk suppressants for a reason. Izuku snapped back. Alright, no need for an attitude. Let's try to stay calm, okay? Hisashi said placatingly. Look, I see both sides and concerns, Hisashi assured them. Then he paused to think about it before making up his mind. Hisashi's thoughts wandered back to yesterday when he overheard Izuku talking to Ace. He clearly didn't want to share his feelings with anyone, but being around people might help him realize he's not alone now that his mom is gone. When Hisashi lost someone important to him, he was really upset and smiled around others while crying at home. He was able to learn how to deal with his loss with the support of Shoyuta and Kayama. While Hisashi was really worried, he knew that Yagi, Shoyuta, and 13 would be there. Plus, Izuku had strong quirks and was learning how to defend himself. Well, what do you have to say? Aizawa asked after a few minutes of silence. I say let him go, Hisashi said evenly. The other three wore matching expressions of shock. Shoyuta, I understand your concerns and we will keep them in mind. However, keeping Izuku locked up isn't good for him either, Hisashi pointed out. But that doesn't mean we should leave him unsupervised. So he should stay with a teacher at all times. Can we agree on that? Hisashi asked, somewhat pleadingly. I'm okay with that, Izuku said. Aizawa simply nodded. Good, now help me finish putting the groceries away. Hisashi told Aizawa. Young Midoriya, I bought you some snacks you should try, Yagi said, and Izuku quickly followed him. Do you really think it's a good idea to bring him? Shoyuta asked anxiously. Yes. I am worried just as much as you are, but we can't keep him locked up here forever. After all, the whole point of being frozen was to give him a better life, right? Hisashi pointed out. Shoyuta sighed. I know you're right, Shoyuta confessed. Hisashi held his husband's hand before placing a soft kiss on his lips. He quickly pulled away with a grin. That just means you care about him. Dare I say you love him like a son, Hisashi teased before Shoyuta let go of his hand and returned to putting the groceries away. Nope. Come on, Shoyuta. No. You are a father in denial. Hisashi teased his husband while picking the scattered bags up. Izuku watched from the doorway and felt guilty for how he acted towards Aizawa. Is everything all right, young Midoriya? Yagi asked. I just wish I acted better towards Aizawa, Izuku admitted. You can always apologize to him, and it's okay to be upset. You shouldn't feel guilty every time you get upset with someone, Yagi said. Izuku smiled gratefully at Yagi before he tried another snack from the assortment that Yagi bought him. Aizawa, I am sorry for my behavior, Izuku said to Aizawa later on. Well, I'm sorry for not considering your feelings about the trip. Apology accepted? Aizawa asked with a small smile. Why yeah, apology accepted, Izuku said as he smiled. He gave Aizawa a hug and Aizawa patted him on the back. Well, I am happy to see that the both of you have made up, Hisashi said. I'm happy too. Thank you for helping us come to an agreement, Izuku said. Hisashi just smiled at him and ruffled his hair. Well, I might have overreacted, but what I said still stands, Aizawa said. Fair enough, Hisashi said. Besides, what could possibly happen? Izuku asked.